presented by Soundlibra.com. Explore more titles via the link in the description or at Soundlibra.com. Welcome to Boundaries That Heal. I'm Alex.
And I'm Lisa. We're so glad you're here. Before we jump in, just a quick heads up that while we're exploring mental well-being, this podcast isn't a substitute for professional medical advice or therapy, so please consult with a qualified professional for your specific needs.
That's such an important starting point. Today, in our very first episode, we're diving into the fundamental idea of boundaries and why they matter so much for our peace and well-being.
Think of boundaries as the invisible fences we create around ourselves. They define what's okay and what's not okay in our interactions with others. Essentially, they're about protecting our energy, our time, our emotions, and our personal space.
For many of us, setting and maintaining these boundaries can feel incredibly challenging. We worry about upsetting people, feeling difficult, or losing relationships. This can lead us to overextend ourselves, feel resentful, and ultimately feel depleted.
That's a really relatable point. So many people feel that internal pull, wanting to be kind and helpful, but also feeling taken advantage of or drained. It's like a constant internal negotiation.
That's precisely why this series, Boundaries That Heal, is so important. Our goal is to guide you on a journey. We'll explore the reasons for boundary setting, understand the different forms boundaries can take, and equip you with practical tools to establish and maintain healthy limits in all areas of your life.
We'll move from understanding our current patterns like people-pleasing and the guilt that often accompanies saying no, to mastering the art of assertive communication. We'll look at navigating boundaries in family, with friends, at work, and even in the online world.
We want to demystify this often feared topic. Boundaries aren't about building walls to keep people out. They're about creating sacred spaces that allow for deeper, more authentic connection. When we have healthy boundaries, we show up more fully in our relationships because we're not constantly trying to protect ourselves from being overwhelmed or hurt.
That's a key distinction. It's not about pushing people away, but about creating a sustainable way to be with people, to give your best without depleting yourself entirely.
Absolutely. So, what can you expect in the coming episodes? We'll start by exploring the deep-seated reasons why healthy boundaries are essential. We'll uncover how a lack of boundaries can manifest in our lives, often leading to stress, burnout, and a feeling of losing ourselves.
And we'll really get into the nitty-gritty of identifying where your personal boundary gaps might be. It's like looking at a house plan and seeing which walls are a little weak or need reinforcing.
We'll be dissecting common patterns like people-pleasing, that relentless drive to gain approval by always saying yes and meeting others' needs above our own. And we'll tackle the significant hurdle of guilt, that uncomfortable feeling that often arises when we even consider putting our own needs first.
That guilt can be a powerful, paralyzing force. So learning how to navigate that, how to challenge those ingrained feelings, will be crucial.
Indeed. And then we move into the action phase. We'll empower you with the language and the confidence to say no effectively, but not just a blunt no. We'll explore how to say no with nuance, how to offer polite declines, and when it's strategically wise to say yes to something else.
This is so important because nobody wants to just be a no person. It's about making conscious choices about where your energy goes.
Exactly. And we'll draw a clear line between assertiveness, which is healthy and respectful, aggression, and passivity. Understanding these different communication styles is fundamental to setting boundaries that work.
And what happens when those boundaries are inevitably tested? We'll equip you with strategies for enforcing your boundaries calmly and consistently. It's not about punishment, but about clear communication and follow-through.
We'll then broaden our scope to look at specific relationships. Family dynamics are often the root of our boundary habits, so we'll delve into that. We'll explore how to set boundaries in romantic relationships, finding that balance between connection and personal space.
And then the modern challenges. boundaries in the workplace, managing our digital lives and the constant influx of information, and how to nurture authentic connections with friends while still honoring our limits.
We'll even address setting unspoken boundaries with acquaintances and strangers, and the important process of reevaluating and adjusting your boundaries as you grow and your circumstances change.
Because boundaries aren't static, are they? They're living things that need tending.
Precisely. And at the core of all of this is self-worth. We'll explore how building your self-esteem is the bedrock upon which strong, healthy boundaries are built. You can't expect others to respect your limits if you don't fundamentally value yourself.
So, it's a holistic approach. It's not just about techniques, it's about internal shifts and self discovery.
Absolutely. We'll also discuss how to deal with more challenging personalities and manipulative behavior, the vital role of self-care and boundary maintenance, and view boundary setting as a holistic practice for overall well-being.
And for those moments when setting boundaries initially brings conflict, we'll help you navigate that storm.
The long-term rewards are immense. A life lived with more authenticity, peace, and genuine connection. We'll talk about reinforcing your boundaries and building a supportive environment for yourself.
And we'll offer advanced techniques for overcoming that persistent feeling of guilt, even exploring how boundaries work across different cultures and situations.
Finally, we'll focus on integrating boundaries into your daily life. This isn't a quick fix. It's a practice, a continuous journey of honoring yourself and others.
So, to recap what we discussed today, we've introduced the concept of boundaries as essential personal protection, defining what's acceptable in our interactions. We've highlighted the common challenges, like fear of conflict and people pleasing, and the importance of overcoming guilt. And we've given you a roadmap for the incredible journey ahead in this series, covering everything from self-worth to navigating complex relationships.
Our overarching message is this: healthy boundaries are not selfless. They're essential for fostering healthy relationships and a peaceful, authentic life. They are the foundations for healing ourselves and our connections with others. We are so excited to embark on this journey with you.
Join us next time as we dive deeper into the why behind boundaries and explore the different flavors they can take.
Thanks for listening. Welcome back. Last time we introduced boundaries as essential guides for healthy living. Now let's tackle the fundamental question: why are boundaries so crucial?
That's a great starting point, Alex. Because we intuitively know boundaries are important, but understanding the deep-seated reasons why we find them so hard and what happens when they're absent can be a real game changer. It's like knowing you need a fence, but not understanding why it's necessary or what happens if you don't build it.
Exactly. At its core, setting boundaries is about self-respect and self-preservation. It's a declaration that your needs, your feelings, and your energy matter. Without boundaries, we can easily become depleted, resentful, and lose touch with ourselves. Think of your energy like a finite resource, like battery power on your phone. If you're constantly letting others drain it without replenishing it or setting limits, eventually you just shut down.
That's a fantastic analogy, Alex. So, when we don't have strong boundaries, what are some of the common ways this battery drain manifests in our lives?
A big one is people pleasing. We say yes when we desperately want to say no. We take on more than we can handle out of a fear of disappointing others or being rejected. This can lead to chronic stress, burnout, and a feeling of being perpetually overwhelmed. Have you ever felt that overwhelming pressure to agree to something, even when every fiber of your being was screaming that you didn't have the time or the inclination?
Oh, absolutely. It's that frantic feeling where you're already juggling so much, and someone asks for another favor, and your brain immediately goes into overdrive trying to figure out how you possibly can, even though it's going to make your life 10 times harder. And then afterward, there's that little knot of resentment that starts to form.
Precisely. And that resentment is a sign that your boundaries have been crossed. It's your inner self saying, hey, this isn't okay for me. When we consistently ignore that signal, that resentment can fester and lead to unhappiness in relationships, both personal and professional. We start to feel taken advantage of, and that erodes trust and connection.
So, this taking advantage of feeling is a direct result of weak boundaries. Then, it's not necessarily that people are intentionally malicious, but rather that we haven't communicated our limits effectively.
That's a very insightful way to put it, Lisa. Often, people don't set boundaries because they're afraid of conflict or they believe it's selfish. They might have grown up in environments where boundaries weren't respected, or perhaps they simply haven't learned the skills. But the truth is, weak boundaries don't protect anyone. They actually harm everyone involved in the long run.
I can see that. When we don't set boundaries, we might also lose our sense of self. Our own desires and needs get pushed aside in favor of others' expectations. It's like we become a chameleon, constantly changing our colors to fit into whatever environment we're in, rather than standing firmly in our own hue.
That's a perfect description. This can lead to a real crisis of identity. You start to wonder, who am I really when I'm not trying to be what everyone else wants me to be? This lack of self-definition can manifest as anxiety, depression, and a general sense of unease or dissatisfaction with life. Your emotional battery isn't just drained, it's struggling to even power your own sense of self.
So, if weak boundaries lead to this battery drain, burnout, resentment, and a loss of self, what are the positive transformations that healthy boundaries bring? What does that charged battery look like?
A charged battery with healthy boundaries means you have more energy for the things and people that truly matter. You experience greater clarity about your values and priorities. You build stronger, more authentic relationships because they are based on mutual respect, not on obligation or fear. You feel more in control of your life and your own well-being.
That sounds like a life where you can actually show up as your true self, rather than a depleted, resentful version. And I imagine it also leads to better decision making because you're not making choices based on people-pleasing impulses.
Exactly. When you know your limits, you can make conscious choices aligned with your goals and well-being. You can say yes to opportunities that genuinely excite you and no to those that would overextend you. It's about creating space for yourself, space to rest, to pursue your interests, to simply be. This self-generated space is incredibly restorative.
So, to summarize for our listeners, weak boundaries act like a constant drain on our personal battery, leading to people pleasing, burnout, resentment, and a loss of our own identity. It impacts our relationships and our overall happiness. It's like living life constantly running on empty.
That's a great summary, Lisa. And the flip side is that establishing healthy boundaries is an act of self-care and self-respect. It's how we recharge that battery, gain clarity, build authentic connections, and ultimately live a more fulfilling and empowered life. It's about becoming the conscious driver of your own energy, not just a passenger along for the ride.
It's about reclaiming your energy and your sense of self. So, now that we understand why boundaries are so vital and the cost of not having them, our next step is to explore the different types of boundaries. Because not all boundaries look the same, do they?
They certainly don't. And understanding those different flavors will be key to identifying where you might need to build or reinforce your own. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to Boundaries That Heal. Now let's tackle the different flavors of boundaries.
That's right, Alex. Just like we have different needs in different areas of our lives, our boundaries also come in various forms. Understanding these distinctions is key to knowing where we might be overextended or where we need to create more space.
I love that, different flavors. So, Lisa, what are some of these flavors we should be aware of?
Let's start with something quite tangible: physical boundaries. These are about our personal space and our physical selves. Think about how close you like people to stand when you're talking to them, or whether you're comfortable with casual touches like a pat on the back or a hug from someone you've just met.
Ah, I see. So if someone consistently stands too close when they're talking to me, that's an infringement on my physical boundary, even if they don't mean any harm.
Exactly. It's about your comfort level and what feels respectful to you. This can also extend to your home. Do you like people to knock before entering a room in your house? Do you have a clear sense of what belongs to you and what's being borrowed? These are all physical boundaries.
That makes sense. It's about respecting physical presence and property. What's next on the menu?
Next up, we have emotional boundaries. These are perhaps some of the most crucial and often the most challenging to establish. Emotional boundaries are about protecting your emotional energy and not taking on the feelings, problems, or responsibilities of others.
This sounds like a big one. I know I sometimes find myself feeling drained after talking to someone who's going through a lot. Is that what you mean?
That's a perfect example. When you have strong emotional boundaries, you can offer support and empathy without becoming a dumping ground for someone else's distress. It's about recognizing that while you can listen and care, their emotions are ultimately theirs to process, just as yours are yours. It's about not absorbing their anxiety or sadness as if it were your own.
So, it's about being compassionate without being consumed. How do we practice that?
It starts with recognizing the feeling. When you feel overwhelmed or unusually burdened after an interaction, ask yourself if you've taken on someone else's emotional load. Then, you can gently disengage or set a time limit for such conversations. This isn't about being cold, it's about preserving your own emotional equilibrium so you can be more genuinely present when needed.
That's a really helpful distinction. So, physical and emotional boundaries. What other flavors are there?
Let's talk about mental boundaries. These are about protecting your thoughts, your beliefs, and your intellectual space. It's about not letting others impose their opinions, judgments, or ideas on you in a way that makes you doubt yourself or feel pressured to conform.
This feels related to emotional boundaries, but distinct.
It is. While emotional boundaries are about feelings, mental boundaries are about your mind and your right to your own perspectives. For instance, if you have a strong belief about something, and someone constantly tries to convince you otherwise or belittle your viewpoint, that's an area where mental boundaries are needed. It's about knowing what you believe and not being swayed by constant criticism or aggressive debate.
So, my mind is my own territory, and I don't have to let others constantly invade it or try to rewire it.
Precisely. It's about maintaining your intellectual autonomy. This also means not letting others dictate how you should think or make decisions. Imagine you're planning a vacation and a friend keeps telling you you're making the wrong choices, even when you're happy with your decisions. A mental boundary would be saying, I appreciate your input, but I've made my decision and I'm happy with it.
That's a clear example of how it works in practice. What's next?
Time is a precious resource, so it's no surprise that time boundaries are crucial. These are about how you allocate your time and ensuring it's used in ways that align with your priorities, rather than being constantly encroached upon by others.
Oh, I definitely need to work on this one. I often feel like my day is dictated by other people's requests and emergencies.
Many people do. Time boundaries involve saying no to requests that overextend you, delegating tasks when possible, and protecting your scheduled downtime. It's about communicating your availability clearly and sticking to it. For example, setting specific times for checking work emails or letting people know you're unavailable during certain hours for personal reasons.
So, it's not just about having time, but about being intentional with how that time is spent and letting others know those limits.
Exactly. It's about valuing your time as much as you value other people's time. It allows you to get things done without feeling constantly rushed or resentful.
Physical, emotional, mental, and time. That's a lot to absorb. Are there any other significant types?
Yes, one more key flavor: material boundaries. This relates to your possessions, your belongings, your money, and your resources. It's about deciding who you share with, under what conditions, and with what expectations.
This could be about lending things out, right? Or perhaps boundaries around personal finances.
Both. It's about being clear on what you are willing to share from your material world and what you are not. For instance, if a friend constantly borrows money without repaying it, that's a material boundary issue. Or if someone is always expecting you to treat them or pay for things, you need to set limits. It's about ensuring your generosity doesn't lead to depletion or resentment.
It sounds like the common thread here is that these boundaries protect our personal resources, whether they are physical space, emotional energy, mental capacity, our time, or our material possessions.
You've hit the nail on the head, Alex. And it's important to remember that these flavors aren't always separate. They often overlap and influence each other. For example, consistently overextending your time can lead to emotional exhaustion, and a lack of material boundaries might impact your mental peace.
This gives us a much clearer picture of just how multifaceted boundaries are. We aren't just talking about one thing. We're talking about protecting different facets of our lives.
Precisely. Understanding these different flavors is the first step in recognizing where your boundary gaps might be.
So, to recap, we've explored 5 key flavors of boundaries. Physical for our personal space, emotional for protecting our feelings, mental for our thoughts and beliefs, time for how we allocate our most precious resource, and material for our possessions and finances. Each of these is essential for maintaining our well-being and living an authentic life.
And these are the building blocks for creating a life that feels balanced and respectful to ourselves and others.
Next episode, identifying your boundary gaps. Welcome back to Boundaries That Heal. Last time, we explored the fascinating world of different boundary types, from physical to emotional, personal to professional. We learned that boundaries aren't just about saying no. They're about defining who we are and what we will and won't accept.
And that's such a crucial distinction, Alex. Knowing the types is one thing, but understanding where those boundaries are weak or non-existent in our own lives, our personal boundary gaps, is where the real work truly begins.
Exactly, Lisa. Today, we're diving deep into identifying those very gaps. Think of your boundaries like a fence around your property. A well-maintained fence defines your space, keeps out what you don't want, and protects what's precious inside. But what happens when parts of that fence are crumbling or there's simply big holes? That's what we're looking for today. The places where our personal fence needs reinforcing.
So, Alex, how do we start to spot these gaps? It feels a bit like trying to find a leak in a roof. Sometimes you don't realize it's there until the water starts pouring in.
That's a great analogy for the feeling, Lisa. Often, it's the recurring patterns that signal a boundary gap. Ask yourself, what situations consistently leave you feeling resentful, drained, or taken advantage of? These feelings are like the dripping water, a clear sign something isn't right.
Resentment, yes, I've definitely experienced that. Like when I agree to do something I don't have time for, and then I end up feeling put out because the other person is getting help, and I'm just stressed.
Precisely. That's a classic example of an emotional and time-based boundary gap. You're allowing your time and emotional energy to be overdrawn without a clear limit. To identify these, we need to become detectives of our own emotional landscape. Let's break it down with some guiding questions.
Okay, I'm ready to put on my detective hat. What's our first clue?
Our first clue involves recurring feelings. So, think about your week, your month, even your past relationships. Do you frequently feel overwhelmed or exhausted? This suggests you might be saying yes too often or taking on too much. Resentful or annoyed. This is often a sign that your needs aren't being met or your personal space is being invaded. Asterisk guilty for saying no or setting limits. This indicates an internal struggle where you feel obligated to give more than you can or want to. Asterisk disrespected or unvalued. This points to a lack of clear boundaries around your worth and how others treat you.
Wow, just hearing those questions makes me immediately think of specific instances. That feeling of guilt when I decline an invitation, it's so strong sometimes, isn't it? It feels like I'm letting someone down.
It absolutely can. And that guilt is a powerful signal that your internal programming around boundaries needs adjustment. It's often learned behavior, telling us we should always be available, always be accommodating. But true self-care and healthy relationships require us to manage our obligations and energy. So, when you feel that guilt, pause and ask, is this guilt serving me? Or is it a sign that my current boundary isn't strong enough to protect my well-being? Usually, it's the latter.
That's a great way to reframe it. It's not about being selfish, it's about sustainability. What else should we be looking for?
Next, let's look at your personal scenarios. Think about the different areas of your life, your family, your friendships, your romantic relationships, and your work. Where do you find yourself consistently compromising your values, your needs, or your comfort? Consider these common areas. Asterisk taking on responsibility for others' feelings or problems. Are you the designated problem solver for everyone, even when it exhausts you? Asterisk allowing others to intrude on your personal time or space. Do friends or family drop by unannounced frequently or expect you to be available at all hours? Asterisk not expressing your needs or opinions clearly. Do you hold back your true thoughts for fear of conflict or let others make decisions for you? Asterisk enduring disrespectful behavior. Do you let people talk to you in a way that you wouldn't accept from anyone else?
That idea of taking on responsibility for others' feelings really hits home. I have a friend who is always going through something, and I feel this immense pressure to fix it or at least listen for hours. I'd leave our calls feeling completely drained, but I'd feel guilty if I didn't answer their calls or texts.
And that's a perfect example of a boundary gap. You're allowing your empathy to become a permeable membrane, letting in more than you can process or manage without harm to yourself. The gap here is in distinguishing between being supportive and being a dumping ground. Supporting a friend is essential, but being their sole emotional therapist without boundaries is a recipe for burnout.
So, the key is to recognize these patterns and the feelings they trigger. It's like we have these invisible lines we want to draw, but we're not quite sure where they should go or how to draw them firmly.
Exactly. And to help clarify where those lines are, let's experiment with a simple exercise. Imagine you are creating a personal boundary budget. Just like a financial budget, you have limited resources, your time, energy, emotional capacity,
A boundary budget. I like that. It makes it tangible.
right? Think about your week. How much of your budget are you allocating to? Asterisk your own rest and rejuvenation. Are you giving yourself enough downtime? Asterisk your personal projects and passions. Are you making time for things that light you up? Asterisk being fully present with loved ones in a healthy way, meaning giving them your attention without feeling obligated or drained. Asterisk, and then how much is left for external demands? Work, other people's requests. When you notice your budget is consistently overspent in areas that don't serve you, that's a clear indicator of an unmet boundary. You're allocating too much of your precious resources to things that deplete you, leaving little for what truly nourishes you.
So, if I see I'm spending more energy on other people's problems than on my own well being, that's a major red flag.
Precisely. It's a signal that your boundary around your own resources is weak. Another way to spot these gaps is to pay attention to your physical reactions. Sometimes, our bodies tell us what our minds haven't yet processed. Do you ever experience asterisk a knot in your stomach when you have to interact with a certain person? Asterisk tight shoulders or a headache before a difficult conversation? Asterisk sudden fatigue when asked to do something you don't want to? These physical cues are your body's way of alerting you to a boundary violation or a potential one.
Oh, absolutely. I get that tight feeling in my chest when I have to decline something, even if I know it's the right thing to do. It's like my body is reacting to the perceived disapproval or conflict.
And that physical reaction is a powerful message. It's your internal alarm system. When you notice it, that's your cue to pause and ask, what boundary do I need to set or reinforce in this moment to honor this physical warning?
So, to recap this section, Alex, we're looking for recurring negative feelings like resentment or exhaustion, examining specific life situations where we compromise ourselves, creating a boundary budget to see where our resources are going, and paying attention to physical signals. These are all indicators of boundary gaps.
You got it, Lisa. And remember, identifying these gaps isn't about self-criticism. It's about gaining self-awareness. It's the essential first step in building stronger, healthier boundaries that ultimately lead to more peace and authenticity in your life. Without knowing where the leaks are, you can't start patching them up.
Knowing where the leaks are is indeed the crucial starting point. It's empowering to realize that these gaps are not permanent flaws, but areas for growth and intention.
Absolutely. We'll continue this exploration in our next episode. We're going to tackle a very common reason these gaps exist, the paradox of people pleasing. We'll explore why we do it and how to start untangling ourselves from that pattern.
Fascinating. So, listeners, take some time this week to be that detective of your own life. Where are your boundaries being tested? Where are they faltering? It's the groundwork for building the healed life we're all aiming for. Thanks for listening.
Welcome back. Last time, we explored the subtle cracks in our defenses, those boundary gaps. Today, we're diving into a topic many wrestle with, the people-pleasing paradox.
The people-pleasing paradox. Most think of people-pleasing as being nice, so how is it a paradox with boundaries?
On the surface, people-pleasing seems virtuous. We want to be liked, helpful, and avoid conflict. But when pleasing others becomes our main drive, it undermines healthy boundaries and leads to internal conflict. Picture this. You desperately want to say yes to avoid disappointing someone, but a part of you knows you shouldn't. That's the paradox.
Ah, I see. So it's prioritizing another's comfort over your own needs, making boundaries almost impossible.
Exactly. At its core, people-pleasing is often rooted in fear of rejection, conflict, or not being good enough if we're not catering to others. This fear drives us to say yes when we want to say no, stuff down our feelings, and avoid asserting our needs. Repeatedly doing this builds a wall around our true selves, trapping us inside.
That's a powerful image. What are common ways people-pleasing shows up? How can listeners recognize it?
One obvious sign is an inability to say no. This isn't just declining a request. It's feeling intense guilt or anxiety when no even crosses your mind. You might overcommit, take on tasks you don't have time for, or agree to things against your values because disappointing someone feels unbearable.
I see that. It's like an internal alarm bell rings not when you're taken advantage of, but when you consider disappointing someone else.
Precisely. Another sign is constantly apologizing, even when unwarranted. You might apologize for taking up space or having an opinion, stemming from a belief that you're an inconvenience. You might also constantly seek validation, tying your self-worth to how much you do for others.
And what about when decisions need to be made?
People pleasers struggle with decisions, especially if they might cause discomfort. They defer to others, seek reassurance, or avoid choosing altogether. They also internalize criticism deeply, taking it as a reflection of their worth, reinforcing the need to people please.
This sounds exhausting. Constantly anticipating others' needs while suppressing your own must lead to resentment.
It absolutely does. Resentment is a surefire sign your boundaries are violated. Prioritizing others' needs consistently makes you feel undervalued and resentful. This can spill into relationships, creating conflict. It's a difficult cycle.
So, if people pleasing harms boundaries, where does it come from? Are we born with it?
Rarely. People-pleasing tendencies usually develop in childhood. If love and acceptance felt conditional on being a good child, you might develop people-pleasing as a survival mechanism. You learn that keeping others happy ensures your own safety and belonging.
So, it's a learned behavior, a way to get needs met, but in an unhealthy way.
Exactly. These patterns become ingrained. They carry into adult relationships, workplaces, and even online interactions. The fear driving people-pleasing is real, but the belief that our worth depends on pleasing others is a misconception we can challenge.
Challenging that belief sounds like the first step to breaking free, but incredibly difficult with a strong habit and fear of disappointing others.
It is challenging, but awareness is the first step. Recognizing these patterns is a huge leap. We've discussed the inability to say no, constant apologizing, the need for validation, difficulty with decisions, and internalizing criticism. These are red flags.
So, for listeners grappling with this, the starting point is gentle self-observation. Not judgment, but noticing, there's that pattern again.
Precisely. With awareness, we question the underlying fears. What's the worst that would realistically happen if I said no? What if I voiced a different opinion? Often, the imagined consequences are far worse than reality. We also need to reconnect with our inner voice, desires, and needs. When you pause before automatically agreeing, what does your gut tell you? What does your body feel?
It sounds like shifting focus from external approval to internal validation. Trusting your feelings and knowing your needs are as important as anyone else's.
That's the essence. We'll explore practical strategies in future episodes. For now, focus on building awareness. Notice the urge to say yes when you want to say no. Notice unwarranted apologies. Observe without judgment and acknowledge these are learned behaviors that can be unlearned. Setting boundaries isn't about being selfish. It's about self-respect, which starts with recognizing the people-pleasing paradox within ourselves.
So, to recap, people pleasing, though seemingly kind, can paradoxically sabotage boundaries. It's driven by fear, leading to overcommitment, apologizing, and seeking external validation. Recognizing these patterns is the crucial first step to overcoming them and reclaiming our needs and worth.
Exactly. In our next episode, we'll delve into the inner voice of conflict, exploring how to overcome the guilt that accompanies boundary setting. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to Boundaries That Heal. Last time, we explored the tricky paradox of people-pleasing. Today, we're diving deep into a feeling that often surfaces when we start to implement healthier boundaries: guilt.
Oh, guilt.
It's like that unwelcome guest who shows up right when you're starting to feel comfortable. Alex, for so long I thought feeling guilty meant I was doing something wrong. If I said no to an extra commitment or asked for some personal space, that feeling of unease would wash over me, and I'd almost immediately backtrack.
That's such a common experience, Lisa, and it's crucial to understand why we feel this guilt. Often, it stems from deeply ingrained beliefs about what it means to be a good person. For many of us, being good has been equated with being endlessly accommodating, always saying yes, and prioritizing others' needs above our own.
Right.
It's like we've been programmed to believe that our worth is somehow tied to our availability and our willingness to go above and beyond, even when it drains us. So, when we finally set a boundary, it feels like we're violating that fundamental programming. Our inner critic pipes up whispering, "You're being selfish. You're letting people down."
Exactly. And that inner critic is often fueled by a misunderstanding of what boundaries truly are. We tend to see them as walls designed to push people away, rather than as fences that protect and define our own space, allowing for healthier connections within those defined areas. So, when we draw a line, a little voice inside says, "You've hurt someone," or "You've caused trouble."
So, for listeners who are nodding along, feeling that familiar prickle of guilt when they even think about setting a boundary, what's the first step to overcoming this?
The very first step is cognitive reframing. We need to start by challenging those automatic guilt-inducing thoughts. Instead of thinking, "I'm being selfish for not taking on this extra project," try reframing it as, "I need to manage my time and energy effectively to do my best work. And that means prioritizing what I can realistically handle right now." It's a subtle shift, but it changes the narrative from selfishness to self-management and responsibility.
That makes sense. So, it's about replacing the accusatory selfish with a more neutral and accurate description of what's happening. It's not about actively trying to harm others, but about looking after your own capacity.
Precisely. Think of it like this. If you were a car and you were running on fumes, trying to drive a further distance would be impossible and damaging. Setting boundaries is like recognizing you need to refuel. It's not selfish to stop for gas. It's necessary for your continued function. And by refueling, you can eventually continue your journey, perhaps even more efficiently.
I love that car analogy. It's very tangible. So, how do we translate this reframing into action when the guilt is still potent?
We practice mindful detachment from a guilt. Guilt is an emotion, and while powerful, it doesn't define reality. When you feel guilty, acknowledge it without judgment. You can say to yourself, "I'm feeling guilt right now." That's okay. It's a familiar feeling, but it doesn't mean I'm doing something wrong. This act of acknowledging the feeling without immediately reacting to it can reduce its power.
So, instead of letting the guilt dictate your actions, you observe it, like watching a cloud pass by.
Exactly. And coupled with observation is the practice of self-compassion. We are often much harsher on ourselves than we would ever be on a friend in a similar situation. Imagine a dear friend telling you they felt guilty for setting a boundary. Would you tell them they're a bad person? Of course not. You'd likely validate their feelings and remind them of their right to self-care. Extend that same kindness to yourself.
That's a really important point. We tend to hold ourselves to an impossibly high standard. So, we acknowledge the guilt, practice self-compassion, and reframe negative thoughts. What else can help us dismantle this guilt barrier?
Focus on the intention behind your boundary. When you set a boundary, your intention is usually not to hurt or inconvenience others, but to protect your own well-being, maintain your integrity, and foster healthier relationships in the long run. Reminding yourself of this positive intention can counteract the guilt associated with perceived negative outcomes. You're aiming for health, not harm.
So, if someone comes back to you later and says they felt let down, instead of immediately internalizing that as proof of your wrongdoing, you can remember your positive intention?
Yes, and this brings us to the idea of consequences. Sometimes, setting a boundary does lead to uncomfortable conversations or temporary friction. This is a natural part of relational dynamics. The guilt often arises from a fear of these consequences. However, remember that healthy relationships can withstand honest communication. Unhealthy ones might crumble, and that's often a sign that the relationship was not serving you well anyway.
That feels a bit scary to think about, that a boundary might reveal a weakness in a relationship.
It can be, but it's also liberating. When you've consistently prioritized others' comfort over your own needs, you might be in relationships that are ultimately draining or unfulfilling. Setting boundaries, while potentially causing initial discomfort, can pave the way for more authentic connections where both parties' needs are respected. It's like pruning a plant. It might look a little bare for a moment, but it encourages healthier, stronger growth over time.
Pruning for growth. I like that. So, to recap, we're facing guilt when setting boundaries because of ingrained beliefs about being good, and we tend to see boundaries as walls rather than protectors. The key strategies to overcome this guilt are: first, cognitive reframing, changing our internal narrative from selfish to self-managing. Second, mindful detachment, acknowledging guilt as an emotion without letting it dictate our actions. Third, self-compassion, treating ourselves with the same kindness we'd offer a friend. Fourth, focusing on our positive intention behind the boundary, which is well-being and authenticity. And finally, understanding that initial friction is often a sign of growth and can lead to healthier relationships.
You've summarized it perfectly, Lisa. Remember, setting boundaries is not an act of aggression or selfishness. It is an act of self-respect and ultimately an act of love. It's about creating the conditions for a more balanced and authentic life, not just for yourself, but for the health of your relationships too.
That's a powerful message to end on. It takes practice, but understanding these principles is such a vital first step.
Next episode, we'll be mastering the art of no. It's a word that can strike fear into the hearts of people pleasers everywhere, but we'll break it down and make it your most empowering tool.
Excellent. I'm already looking forward to it.
Thanks for listening. Welcome back to Boundaries That Heal. Last time we covered overcoming guilt. Now, let's examine saying no.
That's right, Alex. We've laid a fantastic foundation. And today, we're diving into what many people find the most challenging aspect of boundaries: mastering the art of saying no. For some, it feels like an insurmountable hurdle, fraught with fear of judgment or damaging relationships.
Absolutely, Lisa. The simple word no can carry so much weight. But it's crucial to understand that saying no to something that doesn't serve you is actually saying yes to your own needs, your own time, and your own well-being. It's not about being selfish. It's about being self-aware and responsible.
So, how do we move from a place of automatic yes, even when we desperately want to say no, to a place where we can confidently decline requests?
It starts with a mindset shift. We need to reframe no not as a rejection of the person asking, but as an acknowledgement of our own capacity and priorities. Think of your time and energy like a limited resource. You can't pour from an empty cup, can you?
That's a great analogy. We have to decide where that energy is best invested. So, the first step is recognizing that we have permission to say no.
Precisely. You have the inherent right to set limits. It doesn't require an elaborate explanation or a long apology. The fear of disappointing others is often much worse in our heads than in reality. Most people will respect a clear, honest boundary.
Okay, so we've accepted that saying no is okay. What are some practical ways we can actually do it? Because it's one thing to know you can, and another to do it in the moment.
Let's talk about different approaches, because one size certainly doesn't fit all. We can start with direct and polite no. This is often best for less demanding requests or when you have a good rapport with the person. It's clear, respectful, and to the point. Something like, "Thank you for thinking of me, but I won't be able to do that." Or, "I appreciate the offer, but that doesn't work for me right now."
That sounds so simple, yet I can see how that could be hard for some to pull off. The temptation to over-explain is huge, isn't it?
It is. And often, those elaborations backfire. They can sound like excuses and invite the other person to try and solve your problems. A simple, clear no leaves less room for negotiation.
So, keep it brief, keep it polite. What about when a bit more firmness is needed? Perhaps when the request is repeated, or it's something you've said no to before.
This is where we move into polite but firm declines. You might acknowledge their request again, but reiterate your boundary. For example, "I understand you're looking for help with X, but as I mentioned, I'm unable to commit to that at this time." Or, "My schedule is already full, so I have to pass on this opportunity."
That's helpful. It revisits the topic without re-entering a debate. It sets a clear limit and reinforces a previous decision.
Exactly. And remember, you don't have to justify your no with a lengthy story. The more you explain, the more you open the door for someone to try and convince you otherwise. A simple, I'm not able to is enough.
What about situations where you want to say no to the request, but you still want to maintain a positive relationship with the person? It feels like you're balancing two competing needs.
This is where we can use what's often called offering an alternative if appropriate and genuine. It's not about softening the no, but about redirecting. So instead of just saying no to a social invitation that clashes with your need for rest, you could say, I can't make it to that party this Saturday, but I'd love to grab coffee with you next week.
So you're not rejecting the person, just the specific request or invitation. You're showing you value the relationship, but within your own limits.
Precisely. It's about offering a different way to connect that does work for you. Another tool here is the broken record technique. This isn't about being rude, but about calmly and repeatedly stating your boundary. You simply repeat your no phrase without engaging with any arguments or justifications pushed your way. If someone insists, you just calmly reiterate, as I said, I can't.
That sounds like it requires a lot of patience and self-control, especially when someone might be pushing back quite strongly.
It really does. And that's where practicing these phrases in low-stakes situations can be incredibly beneficial. Think about small things: declining an extra cookie, saying no to a request to borrow something you're not ready to lend, or passing on a social event you're not up for. Each small no builds your confidence and refines your approach.
So, for someone who struggles immensely with saying no, what's the simplest, most direct script they could start practicing today?
I'd recommend starting with a simple, polite, and direct no without explanation. Try this. Thank you for asking, but I can't. Practice saying that out loud. Then, perhaps try, I'm unable to commit to that right now. The key is to deliver it calmly and clearly, and then resist the urge to fill the silence with more words.
Thank you for asking, but I can't. That's so concise. It acknowledges the asker without giving them an inch to negotiate.
Exactly. And once you get more comfortable, you can adapt it. You might add a brief, truthful reason if it feels necessary and safe, but make it about your capacity, not an excuse. For example, I can't take on any new projects right now because I'm focused on completing my current ones. That's clear, and it's about your workload.
So, to recap, we've learned that saying no is a powerful act of self-care. It's about protecting your time and energy. We can start with direct and polite no statements like, I can't, or that doesn't work for me.
And for situations that require a bit more assertiveness, we can use polite but firm declines, or even offer alternatives if it feels genuine to the relationship, always remembering that the core no to the request remains in place. The broken record technique is also a valuable tool for staying firm when needed.
The takeaway is that every no we say to something that drains us is a yes to our own well-being and a commitment to living a more authentic life. It takes practice, but the freedom and peace it brings are absolutely worth it.
Absolutely. Mastering the art of no isn't about being difficult. It's about being clear, setting healthy boundaries, and ultimately, respecting yourself. Next episode, we'll explore ways to say no with nuance, looking at polite declines, and how to strategically say yes when it truly aligns with your goals. Welcome back to Boundaries That Heal. Last time, we explored the art of saying no.
Today, we're tackling no with nuance, polite declines, and strategic yes.
Saying no doesn't always have to be a. Welcome back to Boundaries That Heal. Last time, we dove into the art of saying no, exploring polite declines, and strategic yes. Now, let's clarify something essential: how we communicate when we do express ourselves, especially when setting those all-important boundaries.
That's right, Alex. Because it's not just what you say, but how you say it that makes all the difference. Today, we're tackling the three main communication styles: passive, aggressive, and assertive. Understanding these will be a game changer for your boundary setting.
Absolutely. Think of it as a spectrum. On one end, you have passivity, where your needs often get ignored. On the other, there's aggression, where you might get your way, but at the cost of relationships. And right in the middle, the sweet spot, is assertiveness.
Let's break down the passive style first. What does it look like when someone is communicating passively?
When you're passive, you often avoid expressing your feelings, needs, or thoughts directly. You might let others make decisions for you, or you might go along with things even when you really don't want to. It can feel like you're putting yourself last all the time. You focus so much on not upsetting others that you neglect your own well-being.
So, people might not even know what you want or need.
Exactly. You might apologize unnecessarily or speak softly, making it hard for others to hear you, both literally and figuratively. The underlying belief is often, my needs aren't as important as yours, or if I speak up, people won't like me. You might even think you're being polite, but that politeness comes at the expense of your own voice.
And what are the consequences of this constant passivity? Aside from feeling unheard, I mean.
Well, over time, resentment builds. You start to feel taken advantage of, and that can lead to frustration. You might also experience anxiety because you're constantly trying to anticipate what others want and avoid conflict, which is an exhausting way to live. It's like constantly holding your breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop.
That sounds incredibly draining. So, passive communication is about not standing up for yourself. What about the other end of the spectrum, aggression?
Aggression is the opposite. It's about expressing your needs, feelings, and thoughts in a way that violates the rights of others. You might be domineering, demanding, or even intimidating. It's like saying, my needs are more important than yours, and I'll steamroll you to get them met. It prioritizes self over everyone else, disregarding their feelings and boundaries.
So, it might get you what you want in the short term, but it's definitely not healthy for relationships.
Not at all. Aggressive communicators often blame others, interrupt frequently, and can be critical or sarcastic. They might feel powerful in the moment, but this behavior tends to alienate people, damage trust, and lead to conflict. It's like trying to win an argument by shouting the loudest. You might silence everyone, but you haven't convinced them.
And that's also not a foundation for healthy boundaries, is it? Because it can push people away and make them defensive, making them less likely to respect your boundaries in the future.
Precisely. This is where assertiveness comes in, and it's the communication style we absolutely want to cultivate for setting healthy boundaries. Assertiveness is about expressing your own needs, feelings, and thoughts directly, honestly, and appropriately, while respecting the rights of others. It's about finding that balance.
So it's that middle ground where you value yourself and others.
Yes, assertively, you can say what you mean when you mean it without being defensive or aggressive and without violating the rights of others. You can express your opinions, state your needs, say no when necessary, and disagree respectfully. Your tone is usually calm and confident.
How does assertive communication look in practice? Can you give us an example?
Certainly. Let's say a friend asks you to do a favor that you genuinely don't have the time or energy for. If you're passive, you might say, oh, sure, I guess I can try, even though you'll be stressed. If you're aggressive, you might snap, no, can't you see I'm busy? Figure it out yourself. But assertively, you could say, I understand you need help with this, and I appreciate you asking. However, I'm unable to help out this time because I have other commitments. Perhaps we can look at it another time.
I love that. It's clear, it sets the boundary, and it still acknowledges the other person. It doesn't shut them down completely.
Exactly. Assertive communication is built on respect, respect for yourself, and respect for the other person. It involves active listening, being able to clearly state your position using I statements, and being open to compromise when appropriate. It's about advocating for yourself without attacking others.
When we use I statements, we're taking ownership of our feelings and needs, right? Instead of saying, "You always make me late," we say, "I feel stressed when I'm running behind schedule."
That's the perfect illustration, Lisa. Statements make your message personal and less accusatory. They focus on the behavior or situation, not on attacking the person. This approach minimizes defensiveness and opens the door for productive conversation. Think of it as planting your flag on your own needs, but doing so in a way that invites dialogue, not battle.
So, assertiveness communicates clearly and respectfully, while passivity avoids conflict by neglecting your own needs, and aggression achieves goals through dominance and disregard for others.
You've got it. And why is this so crucial for boundaries? Because assertiveness is the only style that consistently allows for healthy, mutually respectful boundaries. Passivity leads to resentment and being overwhelmed, while aggression creates fear and damages relationships. Assertiveness, however, builds trust and ensures your needs are met without infringing on the needs of others.
It sounds like practicing assertiveness is key. It might not feel natural at first, especially if we've been passive or aggressive for a long time.
It absolutely requires practice. Start small. Identify situations where you tend to be passive or aggressive, and then consciously choose to respond assertively. You might rehearse what you want to say beforehand. Remember, assertiveness isn't about being loud or demanding. It's about being clear, confident, and respectful. It's a skill that improves with intentional effort.
So, to recap, passive communication means letting others go first, often at your own expense. Aggressive communication means getting your way by overriding others. And assertive communication means expressing yourself directly, honestly, and respectfully, valuing both your needs and theirs.
That's a fantastic summary, Lisa. Mastering assertiveness is a cornerstone of setting boundaries that truly heal, leading to more authentic connections and a greater sense of personal peace. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to Boundaries That Heal. Last time, we explored assertiveness, aggression, and passivity. Today, we tackle what happens when boundaries are tested.
We've learned how to set boundaries, but the real test comes when someone pushes against them. It's like building a fence and someone walks through it. How do we respond?
Indeed, Lisa, when a boundary is challenged, there's a natural tendency to react. We might feel surprised, hurt, angry, or even guilty. These reactions are normal, but how we act on them is key.
So, what are some common reactions when our boundaries are pushed?
Often, there's immediate pushback. This can manifest in a few ways. They might try to dismiss your boundary entirely, perhaps saying things like, "Oh, come on, that's not a big deal," or "You're being too sensitive." This is an attempt to invalidate your feelings and your right to set a limit.
That sounds frustrating. It's like they're trying to convince you that the boundary wasn't even there.
Precisely. Another common reaction is guilt tripping. The other person might try to make you feel responsible for their unhappiness or inconvenience. They could say things like, "If you really cared about me, you would do this," or "I'm so disappointed in you." The goal here is to leverage your empathy against you.
The classic guilt trip. And I can see how that would work, especially if we struggle with people pleasing. We might start to question ourselves and wonder if we're being unreasonable.
Exactly. It taps into that fear of disappointing others. A third reaction we sometimes see is manipulation or charm. The person might try to flatter you, distract you, or make a special appeal to get you to bend your boundary. They're hoping you'll be so caught up in their charm that you forget your original limit.
So, they're trying to distract us from our own needs by focusing our attention elsewhere. What about more direct confrontation?
That's the fourth common reaction: direct confrontation or aggression. This can involve raising voices, making demands, or even issuing threats, either veiled or overt. The intention is to intimidate you into backing down. It's a power play.
Okay, so we've got dismissal, guilt tripping, manipulation, and direct confrontation. These all sound pretty challenging to navigate. What's our best approach when we encounter these?
The most effective strategy in these situations is to remain calm and reiterate your boundary calmly and consistently. This is where you need to be like a broken record, but a polite one. When someone dismisses your boundary, you can calmly say, "I understand you see it differently, but this is what I need right now."
So, you acknowledge their perspective without agreeing with it, and then firmly restate your boundary.
Exactly. If they try to guilt trip you, you can respond by acknowledging their feelings without taking responsibility for them. For instance, "I hear that you're disappointed, and I'm sorry you feel that way. My decision to state boundary still stands."
Hmm, that's powerful. It separates their feelings from your actions. You're not saying you caused their disappointment in a negative way, you're acknowledging their emotional state.
Right? And with manipulation or charm, you can acknowledge the compliment or the positive comment, but gently steer back to your boundary. "Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. However, regarding the issue of the boundary, my answer is still no."
It's about not getting sidetracked. And for the direct confrontation or aggression.
With direct confrontation, the key is de-escalation and firmness. Avoid getting drawn into an argument. You can say, "I'm not willing to discuss this further when you're speaking to me like that." Or, "I've stated my boundary and I'm not changing my mind. Let's talk about this later when we can both be respectful." If the situation feels unsafe, it's okay to disengage completely.
So, the underlying principle is consistency and calmness. When our boundaries are tested, it's a chance to practice what we've learned about assertiveness. It's not about winning an argument, but about holding our ground.
Precisely. Think of it as reinforcing the fence. Each time you calmly and consistently uphold your boundary, you strengthen it. The other person learns, over time, that your boundaries are real and will be maintained. This isn't about punishing them, but about teaching them how to relate to you in a healthier way.
And what if, despite our best efforts to reiterate, the boundary continues to be pushed?
That's when we need to consider consequences. We touched on this briefly in earlier episodes, but it's critical here. If someone repeatedly ignores your stated boundary, then there needs to be a natural and appropriate consequence. This isn't about being punitive, but about protecting yourself and reinforcing the importance of your limits.
So, what might a consequence look like?
It depends entirely on the boundary and the person. For example, if your boundary is about not lending money, a consequence for repeated requests after you've said no might be to limit contact for a while, or to be very clear that any future request will not even be considered. If a boundary is about not being yelled at, a consequence could be ending the conversation and walking away until the person can speak calmly. It needs to be something that directly relates to the breach of the boundary and is something you are willing and able to follow through on.
That makes sense. It's not a threat, but a necessary step to protect our well-being when our limits are disrespected. It sounds like navigating tested boundaries is really about self-respect and consistent action.
That's a perfect way to put it, Lisa. It's about respecting yourself enough to uphold your limits and consistently taking action to protect your space and energy. It's not always easy, and it can feel uncomfortable at first, but with practice, it becomes more natural.
So, to recap, when our boundaries are tested, we might face pushback like dismissal, guilt tripping, manipulation, or aggression. Our best response is to remain calm, reiterate our boundary consistently, and, if necessary, implement appropriate consequences to protect ourselves.
Exactly. Every time a boundary is tested and you navigate it effectively, you build resilience and deepen your self-trust. You're not just setting limits. You're actively choosing a life of greater peace and authenticity. Thanks for listening. Welcome back. Last time, we explored how to navigate situations where our boundaries are tested. Now it's time to talk about what happens after that test, enforcing consequences calmly and consistently.
That's such a crucial step, Alex. It's one thing to state your boundaries, but another to see them upheld. Many of us know what it feels like to set a limit, only to have it ignored and then feel like we've failed.
Exactly, Lisa. Stating a boundary is like laying down a line. But if there are no consequences for stepping over it, that line quickly disappears. Enforcement is what gives your boundaries real power and teaches others how you expect to be treated.
So, when we talk about enforcing consequences, it sounds a bit harsh. I want to make sure our listeners understand we're not talking about punishment.
That's a fantastic point, and it's the first thing to clarify. We're not aiming to discipline or shame others. Instead, we're talking about establishing natural consequences. These are the direct and logical outcomes that occur when a boundary is crossed. Think of it less as a punishment and more as a natural reaction of the situation.
Can you give us a tangible example?
Absolutely. Imagine you've set a boundary that you need quiet time for an hour after work. You've told your family, I need an hour to myself to decompress when I first walk in the door. Please no interruptions unless it's an emergency. Now, if someone consistently barges in, starts a loud conversation, or demands your immediate attention for something that isn't urgent, the natural consequence isn't to yell or send them to their room.
So, what is it?
The natural consequence would be that you then disengage from that interaction and perhaps communicate, I've asked for quiet time. Since that's not being honored, I'm going to step away for a bit. Or, if the boundary is about a shared resource, say, you've asked your teenager to put their dishes in the dishwasher right after they use them. If they don't, the consequence isn't a lecture. It's that if the dishwasher is full of dirty dishes, you simply can't run it, and maybe they won't have clean cutlery the next morning.
I see. So, the consequence is directly linked to the broken boundary. It's not about making someone feel bad, but about the situation naturally unfolding. It's like if you forget to lock your car door. The consequence isn't that someone punishes you. The consequence is that your car could be more easily broken into.
Precisely. You've hit the nail on the head. And the key to making this work is consistency. I've heard people say, I set a boundary, but then I let it slide because it was just this one time. But that's where the line starts to fade, remember? When we're inconsistent, we send mixed messages. We signal that maybe the boundary isn't that important or that it's negotiable.
That makes sense. So, if I'm being consistent, it helps the other person learn. It's like a signal. Okay, this boundary is real, and this is what happens if I cross it.
Exactly. And remember, the tone matters immensely. When enforcing consequences, it's crucial to remain calm. Overreacting, getting angry, or becoming emotional can undermine the message. It can shift the focus from the boundary violation to your emotional outburst, and the other person might feel attacked rather than understand the clear consequence.
So, it's about being firm, but not furious. How do we manage that, especially if we're already feeling frustrated that our boundary was challenged? Any tips for staying calm?
One of the most effective strategies is preparation and expectation. Know what the natural consequence will be before the boundary is tested. Think it through. If X happens, then Y will be the outcome. When the moment arrives, take a deep breath. You can even use a simple phrase like, I need to take a moment, or let's revisit this when we're both calm. This gives you a pause to regulate your emotions and approach the situation with more clarity.
That practice of pausing is so important, isn't it? It stops us from reacting and allows us to respond. And I guess communicating the consequence beforehand can also be helpful if the boundary is new.
Yes, absolutely. For major boundaries, especially in established relationships. Sometimes a preemptive conversation can be helpful. Hey, I've been working on setting better boundaries, and one thing that's important to me is X. If X is not met, here's what that might look like. This isn't a threat. It's a clear explanation of how you intend to maintain your boundaries. It's about transparency.
So, we state the boundary, we prepare for the consequence, and then, when the boundary is crossed, we calmly and consistently implement that natural consequence. What if the other person reacts negatively? What if they push back, get defensive, or try to guilt trip us?
That's a very common scenario, and it's where persistence really comes into play. When someone pushes back, it often indicates that they're still learning or testing the new dynamic. The key is to gently but firmly reiterate the boundary and the consequence. You can say something like, I understand you feel that way, but my boundary is about X. And when X happens, then Y is the outcome. You don't need to get into a debate or justify your boundary endlessly.
So, don't get drawn into an argument.
Just hold the line.
Hold the line. That's a great anchor phrase. And remember, it's not about winning an argument. It's about protecting your well-being and teaching others how to interact with you respectfully. If the pushback escalates, you might need to further enforce the consequence, which could mean temporarily stepping away from the conversation or interaction until things cool down. I can see we're not able to discuss this calmly right now. I'm going to step away, and we can talk later.
It sounds like this process is really about building trust in ourselves and in others, doesn't it? Trust that we can handle the situation, and trust that the other person, over time, will learn and adapt.
That's a beautiful way to put it, Lisa. It's about self-trust and fostering healthier, more authentic relationships. By calmly and consistently enforcing natural consequences, we're not just setting limits. We're building a foundation of respect and mutual understanding. Over time, this leads to less conflict and more peace because everyone knows where they stand.
So, to recap what we discussed today, enforcing consequences is essential for boundaries to be effective. We're talking about natural, logical outcomes, not punishments. Consistency is key to reinforcing the message. Staying calm and prepared helps us manage the situation effectively. And when faced with pushback, we gently but firmly reiterate the boundary and the consequence, holding the line without getting drawn into arguments.
Exactly. It's a practice, and like any practice, it gets easier with time and repetition. You are building a life where your needs are met and your well-being is protected.
Fantastic. So, we've covered stating boundaries and now how to enforce them. What's next on our journey?
Next time, we're going to delve into navigating those really complex relationship dynamics, specifically looking at family. We'll explore how our family of origin shapes our boundaries and how to set limits within those deeply rooted connections.
Oh, family dynamics are such a huge piece of this puzzle. I'm really looking forward to that. Thanks for listening. Happy learning.
Welcome back. Last time, we talked about enforcing consequences when our boundaries are tested. Today, we're diving deep into family dynamics.
Family. Our first teachers for boundaries, for better or worse. It's where many of us learned or unlearned how to set limits.
Exactly. From a young age, we observe how our relatives interact, express needs, and handle conflict. These early experiences lay the groundwork for how we set boundaries throughout our lives.
So if we grew up with dismissed needs or invaded space, we might internalize that as normal. We might not even recognize our right to personal space or to have our needs met.
Precisely. Imagine a child whose belongings are constantly searched. They might believe their privacy isn't a given. Later, they'll struggle to set boundaries around personal information or belongings because that intrusion became their norm. It's like they're waiting for a permission slip that never comes.
That makes sense. Our internal compass for boundaries gets calibrated by our family's interactions. So, what happens when we try to set boundaries as adults, especially with parents used to old dynamics? It feels uncomfortable, even scary.
It absolutely can. The desire to maintain harmony and avoid upsetting loved ones can be powerful. We might worry about causing rifts or being rejected. Many parents believe they knew best, which can manifest as unsolicited advice or interference, even guilt tripping if we don't comply.
Oh, the guilt tripping. You try to say, Mom, I appreciate your suggestion, but I'll handle this. And suddenly it's, after all I've done for you, you can't take my advice? It's disarming.
It is. Remember, a boundary isn't a punishment. It's a statement of your needs and limits for your own well-being. Navigating family dynamics requires assertiveness, empathy, and consistency. Be clear about your needs without attacking.
So, how do we do that? Let's say I want to set a boundary with my parents about dropping by unannounced. It disrupts my routine. How do I approach that?
Choose a calm moment. Don't bring it up when flustered. You could say, Mom, Dad, I love seeing you and value our time. I've realized I need more predictability. So, going forward, I'd love it if we could plan our visits. Could we call or text before coming over?
That sounds reasonable. You're stating your need, predictability, and offering a solution, planning ahead. It emphasizes what you want rather than what they do wrong.
Exactly. You're framing it around your needs. Be prepared for their reaction. They might push back, express surprise, or hurt. This is where self-compassion and consistency come in. If they show up unannounced, calmly say, Hi, I'm glad you're here, but remember we talked about planning visits? I'm in the middle of something. Can we reschedule for tomorrow?
That's tough. It feels like rejecting them, even though you're not. You're just holding to the boundary.
It does, and that's the emotional weight of family dynamics. But remember guilt? It arises when we violate our own needs. If your need for personal space is genuine, holding that boundary aligns with your well-being. Their reaction is their responsibility.
Okay, so be clear, empathetic, prepared for pushback, and consistently reinforce. What about siblings? Those relationships can be loaded with history.
Siblings often have lingering childhood roles, the caregiver, the rebel. If you are always the peacemaker, it's hard for them to adjust when you say, I can't take on that extra burden, or I won't mediate this argument.
It's like they still see you through the lens of your childhood role. If you were the responsible one, they might struggle to accept you have your own limits.
Precisely. State your needs clearly and kindly. I love you, and I'm happy to help when I can, but I'm overwhelmed and need to prioritize my tasks. Perhaps we can look at other solutions? It shifts the dynamic from you as the default helper to a more collaborative approach.
And for those with very enmeshed families, where boundaries are almost non-existent, where do we begin? It feels like chipping away at concrete.
Start small. Identify one specific thing you want to change. Perhaps not sharing every detail of your life or having uninterrupted time for yourself. Communicate that one small boundary. Gauge the reaction. If met with resistance, don't force it. Revisit it later, perhaps gently. Think of it like seasons changing, gradual, not all at once.
So, to recap, our family dynamics significantly shape our boundary setting abilities. Early family experiences create patterns that can make limits difficult later. When setting boundaries with family, be clear, empathetic, and consistent. Start with calm conversations, focus on your needs, and be prepared for pushback. Navigating these deep-rooted patterns is a process with small, consistent steps.
That's a perfect summary. Setting boundaries within family is a journey, but one that leads to healthier relationships and a stronger sense of self. It's about creating space for authentic connection, built on respect and understanding.
Next episode, we'll discuss boundaries in romantic relationships. Until then, practice setting those small, consistent boundaries with the ones who've known you the longest.
Welcome back to Boundaries That Heal. We just explored family dynamics, and now we're diving into romantic relationships.
Romantic relationships can be such a delicate dance, Alex. We crave closeness, yet also need our individuality.
Precisely. Boundaries are essential for keeping that connection healthy and vibrant. They protect us and the relationship itself.
When we talk about boundaries in romance, what does that really mean?
Picture your relationship as a garden. You nurture it together, but each plant needs its own space and sun to flourish. Boundaries are like trellises, supporting each partner's growth individually while contributing to the beauty of the shared space. They allow you to be distinct and connected.
That's a lovely way to put it. So, not walls, but supportive structures. Where do we often need these structures?
Time is a big one. How do you balance shared activities with personal time? It's healthy to have separate hobbies and friends. Setting expectations prevents resentment. For example, designating certain evenings for just the two of you and other times for individual pursuits.
That makes sense. And beyond time, personal space and privacy are important too, right?
Absolutely. This includes respecting physical space at home or even digital privacy. Even in a partnership, individuals have a right to their own thoughts and private communications. Openness about these expectations is crucial.
How do we even start these sometimes awkward conversations?
Self-awareness is the first step. Understand your own needs for connection and solitude. What truly recharges you? Once you know, you can express it. The goal is collaboration, not dictation.
Collaboration. I like that. So, if I need more alone time, how do I say that without making my partner feel rejected?
Communicate with kindness and clarity. Instead of "you're always around," try "I love our time together," and "I also find I'm a better partner and feel more recharged when I have some quiet time to myself." Frame it as beneficial for the relationship.
That reframing is powerful. It explains the why and connects it to the relationship's health. What about when you have different expectations?
Differing expectations can easily lead to boundary issues. If one person needs constant communication and the other needs focused work time, that's a point for negotiation. Find a middle ground that respects both needs. Ask, what can we agree on that feels good and respectful to both of us?
It sounds like a lot of empathy is needed and seeing things from your partner's viewpoint.
Empathy is the foundation. When your partner needs space, try to understand their why instead of taking it as a personal rejection. And practice that same understanding for yourself.
What if boundaries get crossed? It seems inevitable that it will happen sometimes.
It will. And that's where enforcing boundaries comes in. In romantic relationships, address it calmly and consistently, not as an accusation, but as a gentle course correction. If your agreed upon individual time is interrupted, you might say, "Hey, can we revisit our agreement about Sunday afternoons? I'm finding I feel strained when that time is frequently interrupted. Can we explore how to protect that space?"
So, it's about consistent, gentle reminders, not letting resentment build up until you explode.
Exactly. Consistency is key. If boundaries are only enforced sometimes, they lose their effectiveness. We're building a reliable framework where both partners feel safe, respected, and cherished. This deepens trust and intimacy.
It's amazing how setting limits can actually bring people closer. It's like you solidify the foundation for your shared life by ensuring each person can be their true self.
That's the beautiful paradox. Creating conscious separation allows for more profound connection. You're not lost in the relationship. You're bringing your fully empowered self to it. This prevents burnout, resentment, and the loss of individuality.
So, to sum up, boundaries in romantic relationships are about balancing connection and personal space. They are supportive structures, not walls, allowing both partners to thrive. Key elements include managing time, respecting privacy, and communicating needs collaboratively.
And remember that empathy and consistent reinforcement are vital when boundaries are challenged. By honoring individuality within the partnership, We build a more resilient, authentic, and deeply connected bond.
It's a powerful lesson that healthy relationships are built on mutual respect for the self and for each other.
Well said, Lisa. Next up, we'll explore establishing healthy boundaries in the workplace. Next episode, Workplace Boundaries, Professionalism and Wellbeing. Welcome back to Boundaries That Heal. Today, we focus on the workplace.
The workplace can be a minefield for boundaries. Why are they so crucial there, Alex? And why is it so hard to set them?
Workplace boundaries are vital for our well-being, productivity, and professional growth. Without them, we risk burnout and resentment. It's tough because we want to be team players, fear seeming uncooperative, or worry about our careers.
It feels like a balancing act, doesn't it? Being helpful without being exploited, and efficient without being consumed. So, how do we start establishing these professional limits?
First, clarity. Understand your own capacity, your priorities, and your non-negotiables. What are you willing and able to do? What absolutely needs to be protected, like personal time or focused work periods?
So, before anyone even asks us to do something, we should have a sense of our own limits. That makes sense. What about common boundary challenges at work? I'm thinking about workload.
Workload is a big one. If you're consistently overloaded, it's a sign your boundaries are porous. When asked to take on more, you can respond by saying, I can do that, but to manage my current projects effectively, which of these tasks should I prioritize, or which can be deferred?
That's a great way to frame it. You're not saying no. You're asking for help in prioritization, which puts the onus back on them to understand your current load. It shows you're capable, but also realistic.
Exactly. It prompts a conversation about project management rather than a simple refusal. Another area is availability outside of work hours. This is where many people struggle.
Oh, the dreaded late night emails and weekend calls. How do you set a boundary there without seeming like you're not committed?
It's about communication and consistency. You can set expectations early on. For example, you might state, I strive for work-life balance, so I generally check emails during business hours, but I'll respond to urgent matters promptly if they arise outside of those times.
So, you're not completely unavailable, but you're defining what promptly means and setting a general rule. What if your manager consistently emails late or expects immediate responses?
This is where direct but polite conversation is key. You could say, I've noticed many of our discussions happen after hours. To ensure I'm bringing my best self to work each day, I'm aiming to disconnect after 6 p.m. Would it be possible to schedule urgent discussions for the next business day, or could we designate specific times for critical weekend communications?
That's really skillful. You're explaining the why from a place of self-care and improved performance, not just personal preference. It shifts the focus to mutual benefit.
Precisely. It's about professionalism and sustainability. Now, let's talk about colleagues. Sometimes the pressure comes from peers.
Yes, like being asked to constantly cover for someone, or becoming the default go-to person for every little thing, even if it's not your area of expertise.
For workload sharing, you can use that same prioritization technique. For being the catch-all, it's about gently redirecting. You can say, that's an interesting question. My understanding is that colleague's name is the expert in that area. You might want to check with them. Or, I can briefly point you in the right direction, but for a full answer, you might need to consult the team lead.
So, you're not abandoning them, but you're not taking on their responsibility. You're guiding them to the correct resource. That's so much less confrontational.
It is. It preserves relationships while protecting your time and energy. Another tricky area is navigating requests that feel intrusive or overly personal.
People sometimes overshare or ask overly personal questions. How do you set a boundary there without being awkward?
A simple, polite deflection often works. You can smile and say, "That's a bit personal, but thanks for asking," or "I prefer to keep my personal life separate from my work life." You can also pivot the conversation back to work. Anyway, about that project.
It's about being polite but firm. You don't owe anyone a detailed explanation of your personal life. And what about protecting your focus time? Many jobs are now open plan or have constant interruptions.
This is a big challenge. Using nonverbal cues can help, like wearing headphones, even if you're not listening to anything. It signals do not disturb. You can also communicate your need for focus. I need to dedicate the next 2 hours to completing this report without interruptions. I'll be available again after that.
Headphones as a visual boundary. I like that. And actively communicating your need for focus is powerful. It sets expectations for how and when you can be approached.
Yes, and it encourages others to be more mindful of interruptions. It's about creating a culture of respect for everyone's working time. Remember, setting boundaries at work isn't about being difficult. It's about being effective, healthy, and sustainable. It benefits you, your colleagues, and your organization.
So, to recap, establishing workplace boundaries involves first gaining clarity on your own capacity and priorities. When facing workload issues, ask for help in prioritizing. For availability outside work hours, communicate your general availability and preferred response times. With colleagues, gently redirect requests to the appropriate resources. And use nonverbal cues or direct communication for protecting focus time.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. These practices help prevent burnout, foster healthier working relationships, and ultimately contribute to your professional success and overall well-being. Thanks for listening. Welcome back. Last time, we dove deep into navigating boundaries in the workplace. Today, we're tackling a challenge that touches nearly all of us, establishing boundaries in our increasingly digital lives.
Ah, the digital deluge. It feels like our phones, our computers, our entire online world is constantly vying for our attention, doesn't it? It's so easy to get swept away.
Absolutely, Lisa. In our hyper-connected world, setting healthy online boundaries isn't just a nice to have. It's essential for protecting our mental energy, our focus, and our overall well-being. We need to consciously create space between ourselves and the constant stream of notifications, information, and social demands.
So, where do we even begin? It feels like such an overwhelming topic. What are the main areas we need to consider when it comes to our online lives?
That's a great question, and it's helpful to break it down. We can think about three key areas: managing our screen time, navigating social media expectations, and setting limits around constant connectivity and digital communication.
Screen time, social media, and constant connectivity. Okay, let's start with screen time. It feels like it just happens. We pick up our phones for one thing, and suddenly an hour has vanished.
Exactly. One of the most powerful tools we have is simply becoming aware of how much time we're spending and on what. Have you ever used those built-in features on your phone that show you your screen time? It can be quite eye-opening.
Oh, yes. And sometimes a little shocking. It highlights just how much time we might be dedicating to scrolling or mindless browsing.
Precisely. So, the first step is awareness. Once you know where your time is going, you can start making intentional choices. This could mean setting daily limits for specific apps, like social media or games. Imagine it like setting a timer for a specific activity. When the timer goes off, it's time to switch gears.
That's a helpful analogy. So, it's not about deprivation, but about mindful allocation of our time and energy.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming your time. You might also consider creating tech-free zones in your home, like the dinner table or the bedroom. This encourages real-world connection and better sleep. Think of your bedroom as a sanctuary for rest, not a secondary screen.
That makes so much sense. I know I struggle with bringing my phone to bed. It's a habit that's hard to break.
It is, but the benefits are significant. Better sleep, less distraction when you're trying to wind down. Now, let's talk about social media. This is a big one for many people, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. There's the pressure to be constantly available, to present a certain image, and the comparison trap that can come with seeing everyone else's highlight reels.
You've hit the nail on the head. Social media often creates an unspoken expectation of availability. We see our friends and acquaintances posting and feel a pull to respond or engage immediately. But we need to remember that what people share online is often a curated version of their lives.
So, how do we set boundaries around that? Are we talking about unfollowing people?
Unfollowing or muting can be part of it, absolutely. It's about curating your digital environment to be a positive and supportive space, rather than one that drains you. Another strategy is to consciously decide when and how you'll engage. Instead of scrolling aimlessly, perhaps you set a specific time each day to check your social media and stick to that. Think of it like scheduling a non-negotiable appointment with yourself, where you decide the terms.
So, not letting the platforms dictate our engagement, but us dictating it.
Precisely. And also, managing your own expectations and the expectations of others. You don't have to respond to every comment or message instantly. It's okay to say, I'll get back to you later, or to simply not engage with every single post. Remember that your energy is finite.
That's a powerful reminder. It's easy to forget we have control in these digital spaces.
We do. And that brings us to our third point, setting limits around constant connectivity and digital communication. This is where those notifications come into play, constantly pulling us away from our immediate tasks or conversations.
The pings, the dings, the buzzes. They're designed to grab our attention.
They are, and our brains are wired to respond to them. So, a crucial boundary to set is managing notifications. Consider turning off non-essential notifications altogether. Do you really need to be alerted every time someone likes your photo? Probably not.
Probably not. And it allows me to actually focus on what I'm doing in the moment.
Exactly. This is about creating focused work periods and protected personal time. You can schedule specific times to check emails and messages rather than letting them interrupt you constantly. Imagine designating certain times of the day as communication windows. Outside of those windows, your focus is on something else entirely.
That's a really concrete way to think about it. So for work, maybe I set specific times to check emails, and for personal messages, perhaps I do the same.
Yes, and it's also about communicating these boundaries to others. If you're going to be unavailable for a period, you can let people know. For instance, sending a message like, I'm focusing on a project until 2 p.m. and will respond to messages after that. This sets expectations clearly and kindly.
That feels so much better than just ignoring messages and feeling guilty about it. It's proactive rather than reactive.
Absolutely. And it's not about being unavailable, but about being intentionally available. We're designing our digital interactions to serve us rather than letting them dictate the rhythm of our lives. We're creating digital breathing room.
Digital breathing room. I like that. So, to recap, we've talked about managing screen time through awareness and setting limits, curating our social media experience by being intentional about engagement, and establishing boundaries around constant connectivity by managing notifications and communicating our availability.
That's right, Lisa. Setting online boundaries is an ongoing practice. It requires us to be mindful, to make conscious choices, and to communicate our needs. It's about building a healthier, more balanced relationship with technology. Remember, the goal is to use technology as a tool to enhance our lives, not to let consume them.
It's about reclaiming our focus and our peace in a very noisy digital world.
Exactly. And the rewards are immense. More time for what truly matters, deeper connections, and greater mental clarity.
I'm feeling inspired to implement some of these strategies right away.
That's the spirit. Next episode, we'll be exploring boundaries with friends and how to nurture those authentic connections while still honoring our own needs. Welcome back to Boundaries That Heal. Today we're talking friendships.
Friendships. They're supposed to be easy, right? Pure connection and fun. But as we know, even the most loving relationships need healthy boundaries to truly thrive. In today's episode, we're diving deep into setting boundaries with our friends, ensuring those connections remain authentic and supportive.
Exactly, Lisa. Friends are the family we choose, and strong friendships are built on mutual respect. But sometimes, even with the best intentions, friends can unintentionally cross our lines. This is where understanding and implementing boundaries becomes crucial.
So, Alex, what's the first step in setting boundaries with friends? It feels like it might be trickier than with family, where there's often a long history.
You're right, it can feel that way. The first step is self-awareness, just like with any other relationship. We need to identify our needs, our limits, and what makes us feel comfortable and respected within a friendship. Think about it. Do you need more alone time in your friend? Do you have a different approach to managing money or social commitments? Recognizing these differences is key.
And how do we translate that self-awareness into actual boundaries? Sometimes we might feel guilty about saying no to a friend, even if it's something we really don't have the energy for.
That guilt is a common hurdle. Remember episodes where we discussed overcoming guilt? It's so relevant here. Guilt often stems from the fear of disappointing others or jeopardizing the friendship. But true friendship isn't about constant availability or agreement. It's about understanding and acceptance. When you kindly and clearly state a boundary, you're not rejecting the friend, you're respecting yourself, which ultimately makes you a better friend.
That's a great point. So, instead of thinking, I can't tell Sarah I'm tired because she'll think I don't want to see her, we should reframe it as, I need to rest tonight, so I can be fully present when we meet next week.
Precisely. And this often involves communicating your needs proactively rather than waiting until you're resentful. For example, if you know you need quiet time after work, you might tell a friend, "Hey, I'm usually wiped out by Friday night. I'd love to see you, but maybe next time we could plan something for Saturday afternoon when I've had a chance to recharge." That's setting a boundary about your energy levels without making it personal.
That sounds so much more manageable. What about situations where a friend is consistently asking for more than you can give, perhaps time, energy, or even financial support?
This is where boundary enforcement comes into play. When a boundary is repeatedly tested, it's important to calmly reiterate it and, if necessary, implement natural consequences. For instance, if a friend always asks to borrow money and doesn't repay it, you might have to say, "I value our friendship, but I can no longer lend money." I hope you understand. It's not punitive. It's about protecting your own resources and well-being.
That's a tough conversation, but necessary. What if a friend has a different expectation for how much time you should spend together? Some friends might enjoy daily texts and weekly meetups, while others prefer less frequent, deeper interactions.
This is a classic example of differing needs, and it's perfectly normal. The key is to communicate your preference without judgment. You can say to a friend who texts constantly, "I love hearing from you, and I really value our chats. I'm finding I need a bit more space during the workday to focus. Would it be okay if we aim to catch up properly in the evenings or on weekends?" It's about finding a rhythm that works for both of you. This is about nurturing that authentic connection we mentioned.
So, it's about finding that balance between connection and space, where both individuals feel seen, heard, and respected. It's not about pushing people away, but about creating a healthy dynamic that allows the friendship to flourish.
Exactly. And sometimes setting boundaries can actually deepen friendships. When you're honest about your needs and limits, You allow your friends to know the real you. This can foster a sense of trust and intimacy that wasn't there before. It's like clearing away clutter so the beautiful structure of the friendship can be better appreciated.
I like that analogy. It's about creating a safe space for vulnerability, both for ourselves and for our friends. It allows the friendship to be a source of genuine support rather than a drain.
Think about it this way. Imagine your social energy as a battery. If you're constantly giving without recharging, that battery will eventually run out and you won't have anything left to give to anyone, including your friends. Setting boundaries is like putting your phone on the charger. It ensures you have the energy to engage meaningfully when you choose to.
That's a very relatable image. So, to recap, setting boundaries with friends involves: first, self-awareness of our own needs and limits; second, communicating those needs clearly and kindly; and third, being prepared to enforce those boundaries calmly and consistently if they are tested. And crucially, remembering that this process is about fostering deeper, more authentic connections, not pushing people away.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. It's about building friendships that are built to last, based on mutual respect and understanding. Remember, a healthy friendship nourishes you, it doesn't deplete you. And setting boundaries is the most powerful tool we have for ensuring that nourishment.
It really is.
It allows friendships to be a source of strength and joy, not obligation or stress. It's about nurturing those chosen families in a way that truly honors everyone involved.
Indeed. And with that, we wrap up our discussion on boundaries with friends. Next time, we'll be exploring the unspoken boundaries we navigate with acquaintances and even strangers. Next episode, the unspoken boundaries, setting limits with acquaintances and strangers. Welcome back to Boundaries That Heal. Today, unspoken limits with acquaintances and strangers.
We often focus on close relationships, but casual interactions matter for our energy and peace, don't they?
Indeed, think of colleagues, neighbors, baristas, or fellow commuters. We interact with them regularly, but don't know them deeply. Their actions can still affect our comfort and personal space.
So, it's about managing surface level interactions to protect our energy. How do we set these unspoken boundaries?
The key is subtlety and assertiveness, without lengthy explanations. For an acquaintance overstaying their welcome, say, "Great seeing you for a minute." This implies an end. Or for a favor, simply, "I'm not able to take that on right now."
Clear but not confrontational. It communicates capacity without oversharing. What about chatty hairdressers or pushy salespeople?
With a hairdresser you want quiet, signal your preference. Offer brief responses, then pick up a magazine or close your eyes. If that doesn't work, try, "I'm going to relax and enjoy a quiet moment now."
Creating a quiet space. And for pushy salespeople?
Clarity and decisiveness. A firm, "No, thank you," is usually enough. No need for a long explanation. If they persist, "I'm just browsing today," or "I'm not interested at this time," your comfort is key.
It sounds like we need to be comfortable with a gentle but firm no and signaling needs without justification.
Absolutely. This brings us to strangers. This includes people in our physical space, those striking up uncomfortable conversations or asking for personal information.
The unsolicited conversation on public transport is a classic. How do we navigate that without causing a scene?
Physical space is crucial. Shift your body, angle your bag, or put on headphones. These subtle actions send a signal. If they continue, politely disengage. "Excuse me, I need to make a call," or "I'm trying to concentrate on my book."
Reclaiming personal space. What if the interaction is more intrusive, like personal questions?
Use the vague and redirect technique. Offer a general response and pivot. If asked about your personal life, say, Oh, things are fine. Then ask a neutral question like, have you seen that new movie? Acknowledge them without personal info and steer the conversation.
That's a clever way to maintain privacy without rudeness. It's like an invisible fence.
Exactly. The intention isn't to be unfriendly, but to protect your energy and well-being. It's about comfortable interaction that serves you.
So, for acquaintances, subtle cues and polite refusals manage time and favors. For service providers, signal needs for quiet. For strangers, prioritize physical space and use polite disengagement or redirection.
You've got it. These are small, everyday boundary practices that build self-respect and personal safety.
It's empowering to navigate these interactions with grace and protect our peace, even without deep relationships.
Precisely. This ability to hold your own contributes significantly to your overall well-being, ensuring you feel respected and your energy is conserved.
It's about being present and comfortable, regardless of who we're with.
Next time, we'll reevaluate and adjust the boundaries we've been working on. Welcome back. Last time we covered unspoken boundaries. Today, let's reevaluate and adjust your boundaries.
Boundaries aren't set in stone. They need to evolve with us. Alex, how do we approach this important process of reevaluation and adjustment?
Think of your boundaries like a garden. Lisa, they need tending. They have to stay relevant and effective for your current life. This means consciously making time to check in on them. Even a few minutes each month or quarter can make a difference. Ask yourself, how am I feeling about my interactions lately? Are there recurring issues or feelings of resentment popping up? These are signals that something needs attention, like weeds in the garden.
So it's about listening to our internal compass, our feelings. When I feel drained after an interaction, or consistently say yes when I mean no, that's a clear sign. Resentment and overwhelm are key indicators that a boundary might be breached or outdated. External factors matter too. Changes in job, relationships, or family dynamics should prompt a review.
Exactly. And once we have that awareness, we can use a framework. A helpful approach is to ask specific questions about your existing boundaries. First, are they still aligned with your values and priorities? If your life circumstances have changed, your boundaries may need to adapt.
So, it's not about abandoning boundaries, but adapting them. If a hobby is no longer central, perhaps those evenings can be used for something else important now.
Precisely. The second question, are your boundaries being respected? If a boundary is consistently ignored, it might need to be clearer, or the consequences for crossing it need to be consistently applied. Sometimes the boundary itself needs to change to be more enforceable.
That makes sense. If people keep calling me during my focus time, and I always answer, my boundary isn't truly set. Perhaps the focus time needs to be shorter, or I need a more direct signal like turning off my phone.
A perfect example. A boundary needs to be clear and consistently upheld. The third question, have your needs changed? As we grow, our needs for connection, solitude, or rest evolve. A boundary that once provided enough personal space might not be enough now, or it might feel too restrictive.
This is crucial. My need for social interaction has grown, but I still need my quiet time. So, I've adjusted the frequency and duration of social engagements, ensuring I still get that vital alone time. It's about being honest about what nourishes you and what drains you now.
Exactly. And that leads to the fourth question. Are there new areas where you need to establish boundaries? New activities, projects, or people often require new boundaries to maintain your well-being. This includes boundaries around your digital life if you feel constantly bombarded by notifications.
That digital deluge. It's so easy for those boundaries to slip. So, we've identified areas needing attention and asked key questions. What's next? How do we make these adjustments?
Adjustment involves clear communication. If you're changing an existing boundary, especially in close relationships, it's helpful to inform the relevant people. You don't need extensive explanations, just a simple statement like, I've realized I need to adjust my schedule. I'll be unavailable during these times, but I'm happy to connect at these other times.
So, we revisit the language of boundaries, but with an update?
Precisely. And remember our discussion on assertiveness versus aggression and passivity. When adjusting boundaries, communicate assertively. State your needs clearly and calmly, without blaming. It's about what works for you.
What about deeply ingrained, automatic boundaries? Do they need reevaluation too?
Absolutely. Sometimes, automatic boundaries stem from old fears or outdated beliefs, like an automatic never say no because of people-pleasing. Reevaluating that means recognizing the cost of that automatic response, the resentment, the exhaustion, and consciously choosing to build in a genuine no when needed.
This process seems deeply tied to self-worth and self-awareness, which are foundational to strong boundaries.
You've hit the nail on the head. Reevaluating and adjusting your boundaries is an act of self-respect. It asserts that you are worthy of having your needs met and that your needs can change. This ensures your boundaries remain healthy tools, not rigid fences or outdated rules.
So, to recap, treat your boundaries like a garden. Regularly check in on how you feel in interactions, consider life changes, and ask, are boundaries aligned with values? Are they respected? Have needs changed? Are new boundaries needed? When adjusting, communicate clearly and assertively. It's an ongoing practice for healthy boundaries.
Well said. This dynamic process makes boundaries powerful allies for authenticity and peace. Thanks for listening. Welcome back. Last time we covered reevaluating and adjusting your boundaries. Today, we're diving into building your self-worth. Your self-worth is the bedrock upon which strong, healthy boundaries are built.
That's such a crucial connection, Alex. It's easy to focus on the actions of setting boundaries, but if we don't address our internal sense of value, those actions can feel shaky, can't they?
Exactly, Lisa. If you don't truly believe you're worthy of respect, how can you expect others to respect your limits? If you doubt your own needs, you'll sacrifice them to please others. This is where boundary erosion begins.
So, when we talk about self-worth, what exactly are we referring to?
Self-worth is your inherent belief in your value as a person, independent of achievements or what others think. It's recognizing your dignity and accepting yourself, flaws and all. It's that deep down feeling that you matter, simply because you exist.
That's a powerful definition. And you're saying this directly impacts our ability to set boundaries?
Absolutely. When you have high self-worth, you understand your time, energy, and emotional well-being are valuable resources. You prioritize them. You don't feel guilty saying no because you know you deserve to protect your own capacity. It's like having a strong internal compass.
I can see that.
If I feel I'm not worth much, I might believe that other people's needs are always more important than mine. So I'll just go along with things even if they drain me.
Precisely. And then, setting a boundary can feel like a huge risk. You might worry that if you state your needs, others will reject you. This fear is rooted in a belief that your value is conditional.
And that's the people-pleasing paradox we've touched on. We try to gain approval by being agreeable, but in doing so, we erode our own sense of self.
Exactly. Now, here's the fascinating part. Setting boundaries doesn't just require self-worth, it also actively builds it. Every time you successfully communicate a limit, every time you honor your own needs, you're sending a powerful message to yourself. You're reinforcing that belief, my needs matter. My feelings are valid. I am capable of advocating for myself.
So it's a virtuous cycle. You have self-worth, so you set boundaries. And by setting boundaries, you increase your self-worth. That's so empowering. How do we actively cultivate this self-worth then?
It starts with awareness. First, identify where your beliefs about your worth come from. Are they based on childhood messages, past experiences, societal pressures? These beliefs are learned, and learned beliefs can be unlearned and replaced.
It's not necessarily an innate flaw, but a programming that can be updated.
Exactly. Next, challenge those negative self-talk patterns. When you catch yourself thinking, I'm not good enough, pause. Ask yourself, is this thought actually true? What evidence do you have for it and against it? Remember those times you did stand up for yourself, the times you were respected, the times you were kind?
And celebrating those small wins is key, right? Not just waiting for some grand achievement to feel worthy.
Absolutely. Start small. Practice saying no to trivial requests that you don't have the energy for. Notice how it feels. Did the sky fall? You might experience a fleeting moment of discomfort, that old guilt surfacing, but you can work through it by reminding yourself that you are deserving of rest and peace.
And then gradually, you build up to bigger boundaries. It's like strengthening a muscle. You don't start with lifting the heaviest weights.
Right? Another powerful way to build self-worth is through self-compassion. Treat yourself with the same kindness and patience you would offer a dear friend. When you make a mistake, acknowledge it, learn from it, and move on with gentleness. This acceptance of imperfection is a cornerstone of high self-worth.
Self-compassion feels so counterintuitive for many because it's often confused with weakness. But it's really about resilience, isn't it?
It is entirely about resilience. It's the recognition that being human means being imperfect and that our worth isn't tied to flawless performance. Ultimately, building self-worth is an ongoing practice. It involves consciously choosing to believe in your own value, even when it's difficult. It's about recognizing that you are worthy of having your boundaries respected and that advocating for yourself is an act of self-love.
So, to recap, our self-worth is our belief in our inherent value as a person. This belief directly fuels our ability to set and maintain healthy boundaries because it tells us that our needs, time, and energy are valuable and deserve protection. And crucially, every time we practice setting a boundary, we reinforce and build that very self-worth. It's a two-way street, a supportive relationship between our inner value and our outer limits.
Beautifully put, Lisa. It's about nurturing that internal voice that says, I matter. When you truly believe that, setting limits becomes not an act of defiance, but a natural expression of respect for yourself. And that, my friends, is the foundation of boundaries that truly heal.
It sounds like building self-worth and setting healthy boundaries are two sides of the same coin, mutually reinforcing each other for a more authentic and peaceful life.
That's exactly right. It's a continuous journey of self-discovery and self-respect. Thanks for listening. Welcome back. Last time we discussed building self-worth as the foundation for healthy boundaries.
And today, Alex, we're tackling a really challenging aspect of boundary setting, dealing with difficult personalities and manipulators.
Exactly, Lisa. These are individuals who often test or ignore boundaries, making you feel like you're constantly in a battle. Our goal today is to offer strategies for navigating these situations while maintaining your integrity.
It can feel like they're playing by different rules, constantly shifting them to their advantage. You might set a clear limit, and they find a way around it or dismiss it entirely. It's exhausting.
It is. The key for us is to remember our objective, not to change them, but to protect our own well-being and uphold our boundaries. Our focus must be on our response, not their actions. Staying calm is one of our most potent tools. When we become flustered or reactive, we give them more power.
So, staying calm is the first internal anchor. But how do we manage that when someone is actively trying to provoke us, perhaps through passive aggression or by being overly charming?
Awareness is crucial. Recognize the tactic. When someone uses guilt, like saying, "After all I've done for you, you can't do this one small thing," your awareness flags it as a guilt trip designed to make you feel obligated and override your boundary. Once you identify it, its power diminishes. This allows you to choose a calm response instead of an emotional reaction.
That makes perfect sense. It's like having a mental defense based on understanding, not anger. If I recognize a guilt trip, what's a good, calm response?
You can acknowledge their statement without agreeing to the demand. Gently and firmly restate your boundary. For example, say, "I appreciate what you've done, and I understand this is important to you. However, my answer is still no." The emphasis is on calmly repeating your boundary. You aren't arguing or justifying. You're simply stating your position.
I appreciate what you've done, and I understand this is important to you. However, my answer is still no. That's a fantastic example. It validates their feelings without giving up your ground. What about other tactics, like stonewalling or the silent treatment when you try to enforce a boundary?
Stonewalling, where someone withdraws and refuses to communicate, is another tactic intended to exhaust you into abandoning your boundary. In such cases, direct confrontation might not work. Instead, you can state that you are available to discuss the issue when they are ready to engage respectfully. You might say, "I'm here to talk when you're ready to discuss this calmly. I won't continue this conversation if you're not willing to listen." This puts the responsibility back on them, with clear expectations.
So, rather than chasing them or getting frustrated by their silence, you set a clear condition for engagement. That's quite different from getting pulled into their drama.
Precisely. And for manipulators who use charm, flattery, or subtle threats, like love bombing, followed by criticism, consistent, calm repetition of your boundary is your strength. When they try to win you back with excessive praise after you've set a limit, acknowledge their compliment neutrally. "I hear that you're pleased with my work." Then, steer back to the boundary. However, the agreed upon deadline remains August 15th.
It's like having a verbal shield. They can use their tactics, but your words are designed to deflect without escalating. And what happens when they try to twist your words or gaslight you, making you doubt your own perception?
That's a deeply unsettling experience. The most effective strategy is to trust your own perception and stick to the facts. Calmly state what you recall or what was agreed upon without becoming defensive. If they say, "You never agreed to that," you can respond, "My understanding, based on our conversation on Tuesday, was that we agreed to X." It can be helpful to have written confirmations, like emails, for important agreements.
Having written evidence is incredibly grounding when someone is trying to make you doubt yourself. So, the core takeaways are recognizing tactics, staying composed, calmly repeating your boundaries, and trusting your own reality. It sounds like a lot of internal work.
It absolutely is. It's about reinforcing your internal compass so you're not easily swayed by external pressure. Another critical point, especially with manipulators, is understanding that their behavior often stems from their own insecurities or needs. However, that doesn't excuse it. Your responsibility is to yourself, not to manage their emotions or reactions.
That's a powerful distinction. It's not about fixing them, but about protecting yourself. And sometimes this means creating distance, doesn't it?
Indeed, if someone consistently violates your boundaries despite your best efforts, and their behavior is damaging your well-being, you may need to consider limiting contact or even ending the relationship. This is not a failure, but a necessary act of self-preservation. It's about recognizing when an interaction or relationship is no longer healthy or sustainable.
So, setting boundaries with difficult people isn't just about saying no. It's about building internal resilience, staying grounded in your reality, and having the courage to disengage when necessary to protect your peace.
You've summarized it beautifully, Lisa. It's a practice of self-respect, applied consistently, even when met with resistance. Remember, your boundaries are not a punishment for others, but a promise to yourself. Thanks for listening. Welcome back. Last time we covered difficult personalities. Now let's focus on self-care for boundaries.
It's so important, Alex. If we're drained, how can we possibly have the energy to set or hold boundaries?
Exactly. Self-care is the fuel for our boundary setting. Think of your boundary reserves like a bank account. Setting boundaries withdraws, and self-care makes deposits. Without deposits, the account goes into overdraft.
And when overdrawn, we feel resentment, burnout, and might let boundaries slip because it's easier. We revert to people-pleasing or ignore our own needs.
Precisely. Self-care replenishes your physical, emotional, and mental resources. When cared for, you have a stronger sense of self and more resilience to handle challenges.
What does self-care practically look like then? Beyond an occasional spa day? It needs to be integrated, right?
Absolutely. It's about consistent, sustainable practices. Enough sleep, physical activity, quiet reading, meditation, hobbies, or nourishing meals. Whatever genuinely refreshes and centers you.
Just 5 minutes of quiet without demands can be a huge act of self-care for me. It's a mini reset.
That's a perfect example. Self-care also includes saying no to things that drain you. That's a boundary itself. Setting a boundary to protect your time is self-care, and self-care strengthens your ability to set that boundary.
It's a beautiful, reinforcing cycle. Neglecting self-care weakens our defenses, making us vulnerable to overcommitment and less likely to recognize our limits being crossed. It's like building a fortress with weak materials.
Well said. This is crucial when starting to assert boundaries in relationships where they've been weak. Asserting yourself can be emotionally taxing. Without self-care, you can get depleted and retreat to old patterns.
So, if someone feels consistently resentful or exhausted, it's a red flag. Their self-care is likely suffering, and their boundaries are too. It's a signal to ask, what do I need to replenish myself?
Exactly. It's not selfish. Prioritizing your needs allows you to show up as your best self. You can't pour from an empty cup.
That analogy is spot on. Running on fumes makes interactions strained and patience thin. When you're rested, you can be more present, understanding, and effective.
That effectiveness extends to your boundary work. When you've cared for yourself, you communicate needs clearly and calmly. You're less swayed by guilt because you have a stronger internal compass. You feel more deserving of respect.
Let's discuss common barriers to self-care. Time is a big one. People feel they don't have enough hours. Guilt is another, as we touched on. And sometimes, it's not knowing how to self-care.
Those are real. For time, it requires prioritizing. Can you carve out 15 to 30 minutes daily? Perhaps a nourishing activity instead of mindless scrolling. For guilt, reframe self-care as a necessity for effectiveness, an investment in your well-being.
For those unsure, it's about experimentation. Try music, stretching, journaling, nature, or connecting with friends. The key is finding what leaves you feeling better. Listen to your body and mind.
Absolutely. Self-care is often in the small, consistent moments. Choosing a healthy meal, going to bed earlier, saying no to an extra commitment. These small acts build up and impact your boundary maintenance.
So, to recap, self-care is the essential foundation for setting and maintaining healthy boundaries. It replenishes energy, boosts resilience, and provides clarity for communicating needs. Neglecting it leads to depletion and burnout. Integrating self-care strengthens boundary setting and fosters a more balanced, authentic life.
And self-care needs to be a conscious, ongoing practice. It's a way of living that sustains your energy and resolve. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to Boundaries That Heal. Today we're setting boundaries for overall well-being in a holistic way.
Last time we explored how self-care helps us set limits. Today, we're connecting the dots, showing how boundaries across physical, mental, and emotional space create a protective shield for our well-being. It's about building a consistent system of protection for greater peace and health.
Exactly. Think of it like building a strong, healthy ecosystem for yourself. Holistic well-being looks at how our physical health, mental clarity, and emotional equilibrium are all intertwined. Setting boundaries is key to nurturing that balance.
So, a holistic approach means we focus on how all areas support each other?
Precisely. Let's start with the physical realm, your personal space, your time, and your energy. Setting physical boundaries means saying what is and isn't okay and how people interact with your body, belongings, and environment. This could be needing personal space or saying no to uncomfortable touch.
That makes sense. It's about respecting your physical limits. For example, if someone constantly touches you without permission, that can feel intrusive. Setting a boundary there would be saying, "Please don't touch me without asking first."
That's a perfect example, Lisa, and it extends to your time and energy. Are you consistently overcommitting yourself, leaving you exhausted? That's a lack of a physical boundary around your capacity. Setting a boundary here means recognizing your limits and saying no to commitments, even appealing ones, if they'll deplete you. It's about safeguarding your physical resources.
So, for our physical well-being, boundaries protect our personal space, physical energy, and time from overuse or invasion. It's about saying yes to our own needs for rest and personal space.
Exactly. Now, let's move to mental well-being, protecting your thoughts, focus, and peace of mind. In our hyperconnected world, this is crucial. Think about the constant barrage of information, news, and notifications.
Oh, tell me about it. It feels like my brain is always on.
And that's where mental boundaries come in. This can involve setting limits on news consumption, when you engage with social media, or even who you allow to fill your mental space with negativity. Are you constantly listening to gossip or complaining? Those drain your mental energy and create stress.
So, it's about curating what enters our minds. It sounds simple, but I imagine it's hard to do.
It is, especially when we're used to being constantly available. Setting mental boundaries might mean designating specific times to check emails or social media, rather than all day. It could mean consciously choosing to disengage from draining conversations, or even setting boundaries with yourself about rumination, gently redirecting your attention when you get stuck in negative thought loops. This is about safeguarding your mental clarity and preventing overwhelm.
That idea of redirecting your attention is powerful. It's like saying, my mind is my own and I decide what I focus on and for how long.
Absolutely. And finally, let's talk about emotional well-being. This is perhaps the most nuanced, dealing with our feelings, vulnerabilities, and connections. Emotional boundaries are about determining what is your responsibility to feel and manage, and what belongs to someone else.
This is where it often gets tricky, isn't it? The lines can get so blurred, especially with people we care about.
They certainly can. A key aspect of emotional boundaries is recognizing that you're not responsible for other people's happiness or fixing their problems. While empathy is wonderful, taking on someone else's emotional burden as your own indicates weak emotional boundaries. It's like trying to carry two heavy suitcases when you can only practically manage one.
So, it's about differentiating your feelings from theirs. If someone is upset, it's okay to offer support, but not to absorb their sadness as if it were your own. That's a boundary that protects your emotional health.
Exactly. Another crucial emotional boundary is around sharing your own vulnerabilities. It's about choosing who you disclose what to based on trust and safety. Not everyone is entitled to your deepest emotions or struggles. This ensures your emotional energy is protected and invested wisely.
This is so important. We often overshare with people who haven't earned that trust, or we keep our feelings locked down when we're with someone safe. It's about finding that balance and ensuring our emotional core is respected.
Precisely. When we establish clear boundaries across all these areas, physical, mental, and emotional, we create a powerful shield for our well-being. This holistic approach isn't about pushing people away. It's about creating a safe and sustainable inner environment so you can engage with the world more fully and authentically.
It really does sound like a recipe for greater peace and reduced stress. By protecting our personal space, our mental focus, and our emotional capacity, we're essentially giving ourselves permission to thrive, not just survive.
And that's the ultimate goal, isn't it? A life where you feel respected, energized, and emotionally balanced. These boundaries act as a preventative measure, reducing the need for intense conflict resolution later on. They're an ongoing practice of self-respect.
So, to recap, holistic well-being through boundaries means actively protecting our physical space, time, and energy, curating our mental input and focus, and understanding our responsibility for our own emotions while respecting others. It's about building a robust personal foundation.
You've got it. This integrated approach to boundaries truly empowers us to live more authentically, experience less burnout, and cultivate deeper, healthier connections. Thanks for listening. Welcome back. Last time, we explored setting boundaries for your overall well-being. Now, let's tackle navigating the storm of initial conflict.
That's right, Alex. It's that moment after you've bravely said no or stated your needs, and suddenly, the atmosphere shifts. You might feel a pang of guilt, anxiety, or even fear. It's common to worry that by setting a boundary, we're going to alienate people or cause a major rift in our relationships.
Absolutely, Lisa. This fear is a significant barrier for many people. They anticipate a storm of objections, accusations, or even outright rejection. It's like stepping into a quiet room and suddenly shouting, and you're bracing for all the negative reactions. But it's crucial to understand that this initial discomfort is often temporary. Think of it like adjusting to a new routine. When you first start exercising or waking up earlier, it feels a bit jarring, doesn't it? You might be tired or a bit grumpy. But with consistency, your body and mind adapt, and it becomes the new, healthier normal.
That's a great analogy, Alex. So, the initial conflict isn't necessarily a sign that the boundary is wrong, but rather a sign that something is changing. It's the system reacting to a new input. When we've been operating under one set of unspoken rules, introducing a new one, even a healthy one, can create a ripple effect. People who are used to a certain dynamic might feel unsettled.
Precisely. They might push back because they're accustomed to a different interaction. This pushback can manifest in various ways, perhaps mild annoyance, persistent questioning, or even an attempt to guilt trip you. It's important to remember why we set boundaries in the first place, to protect our energy, our emotional well-being, and to foster healthier, more authentic relationships. These initial reactions, while uncomfortable, are often a test of the boundary itself.
So, when this initial conflict arises, what's the first step for our listeners? How do you navigate those first few difficult conversations?
The first and most vital step is self-compassion and grounding. Remind yourself that you're doing something positive for yourself and, in the long run, for the relationship. Reconnect with your why. Why did you set this boundary? What need is it fulfilling? This self-assurance will be your anchor. Then, it's about maintaining your stance calmly and consistently. If someone questions your boundary, you don't need to over-explain or justify it endlessly.
Over-explaining feels like we're asking for permission to have our boundary, doesn't it? It can weaken our position.
Exactly. A simple, assertive statement often suffices. For instance, if you've decided to limit work calls after a certain hour and a colleague calls late, you can say, "I'm unable to take this call right now as I've finished my workday. We can connect first thing tomorrow." It's direct, polite, and clearly states your limit without apology. You're not saying, "I don't want to talk to you," but rather, "I am not available at this specific time."
That makes sense. It's about stating the what and the when without getting into a lengthy debate about the why. And what if they continue to push or seem genuinely upset?
This is where consistent enforcement comes in. If, after your calm statement, the behavior persists, say they call again, or try to manipulate the situation, you might need to calmly restate your boundary or introduce a consequence. For example, as I mentioned, I'm not available to discuss work matters after 6 p.m. If these calls continue, I'll need to adjust my working hours to ensure I can disconnect. The consequence should be something you are willing and able to follow through on, and it should be related to the boundary itself. The goal here isn't punishment, but to communicate the seriousness of your limit and to reinforce that it needs to be respected.
So, the consequence isn't about making them feel bad, but about creating a clear cause and effect that teaches them how to interact with you respectfully within your new boundaries.
Precisely. And it's not about shutting down connection. When you set a boundary, especially with loved ones, you might also offer an alternative. "I can't make it to the party this Saturday because I need some downtime, but I'd love to schedule a coffee catch-up next week." This shows you value the relationship, but you are prioritizing your well-being. You're saying, "This specific thing won't work for me right now, but I'm open to connecting in a way that does."
That's a really important nuance. It's not about erecting walls, but about building bridges that are sturdy and sustainable for everyone involved. And what about difficult personalities? We've touched on this before, but when someone is particularly adept at manipulation or disregarding boundaries, how do you handle that initial conflict?
Navigating difficult personalities requires an extra layer of self-awareness and protection. When setting boundaries with manipulators, you often need to be even more firm and less open to negotiation, as they may twist your words or intentions. Your communication should be clear, concise, and factual. Avoid emotional language, as it can be used against you. Stick to what you can control, your actions, and your responses. Sometimes, with certain individuals, the most effective enforcement might involve creating distance. This could mean limiting contact, not engaging in lengthy discussions, or even, in extreme cases, being prepared for a temporary or even permanent disconnect.
That sounds incredibly challenging. It requires a lot of emotional resilience.
It does. And that's why building your self-worth is so fundamental. When you truly believe you deserve respect and well-being, it becomes easier to withstand pushback. You're not asking for permission to take up space. You're claiming the space you are inherently entitled to. And remember, the goal isn't to eliminate all conflict from your life. Healthy relationships will have disagreements. The difference is that after conflict resolution, those relationships are often stronger and more honest.
So, to recap what we discussed today, when you set a boundary and meet initial conflict, remember to stay grounded in your why. Respond calmly and consistently, avoid over-explaining, and be prepared to enforce your boundary with clear, related consequences if necessary. Offering an alternative can help preserve the relationship when appropriate, and for difficult personalities, extra firmness and potentially distance might be needed.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. The key takeaway is that while immediate discomfort is common, it's often a sign that you're establishing a healthier dynamic. This storm of initial conflict, when navigated with intention and self-compassion, often leads to calmer waters and more authentic connections on the other side. It's a testament to your growing strength and your commitment to a life that truly heals and honors you.
It's a brave step, and one that's absolutely worth taking. Thanks for guiding us through this, Alex.
Thank you for being such a wonderful co-host and for asking those great questions.
Next episode, the long-term rewards, a life of authenticity and peace.
Welcome back. Last time we covered navigating initial conflict when setting boundaries. Now let's explore the long-term rewards.
Absolutely. It's that crucial phase where old patterns are challenged, and it can feel a bit unsettling. But today, Alex, we're shining a spotlight on the other side of that challenge. We're talking about the long-term rewards.
That's right, Lisa. Imagine a life where you feel truly aligned with yourself, where your energy isn't drained by overcommitment, and where your relationships are built on genuine respect. This is the landscape that consistent boundary setting helps us create. It's not just about saying no to things, it's about saying yes to ourselves and to the life we truly want to live.
So, what does this life of authenticity and peace truly look like in practice? We've spent a lot of time discussing the how-to of boundaries, but today, let's really savor the why it's worth it.
One of the most profound long-term rewards is the cultivation of deeper, more authentic relationships. When you set healthy boundaries, you're essentially communicating your needs and limits clearly and respectfully. This allows others to understand you better. They know what to expect, and they learn how to treat you in a way that honors your well-being.
That makes so much sense. Instead of relationships being based on an unspoken hierarchy or a constant guessing game, they become based on mutual understanding and respect. It's like building a house on a solid foundation rather than on shifting sand.
Exactly. And this clarity often leads to fewer misunderstandings and less resentment. Think about it. When you consistently overextend yourself, you might start to feel resentful towards those you're helping. That resentment erodes relationship quality. But when you set a boundary, you're preserving your energy and your good feelings, which you can then invest more genuinely in those connections. You're not giving out of obligation or depletion, but out of genuine desire.
So, it's not about pushing people away, but about creating a much healthier and sustainable way to connect. It's about giving yourself permission to have needs and limits and allowing others to do the same.
Precisely. Beyond relationships, another huge reward is personal freedom. When you're not constantly saying yes to things that drain you, you reclaim your time and your energy. This reclaimed energy is your freedom. It's the freedom to pursue your passions, to rest when you're tired, to spend time with people who uplift you, or simply to have unstructured, spontaneous moments in your day.
That feeling of having my time and energy back is so powerful. It's like unlocking a hidden reserve of capacity that I didn't even realize I had because it was always being chipped away at.
It really is. And this personal freedom directly contributes to a greater sense of authenticity. When your life is filled with activities and commitments that genuinely align with your values and desires, you're living a more authentic life. You're not performing a version of yourself that you think others want to see. You're simply being you, with all your unique strengths and limitations.
That sounds like a significant shift. So, it's not just about managing external demands, but about aligning our internal world with our external actions. When we maintain our boundaries, we're essentially saying, this is who I am, and this is what I need to thrive.
That's a perfect way to put it, Lisa. And this alignment cultivates a profound sense of inner peace. When you're constantly battling internal conflict, the guilt of saying no, the pressure to please, the exhaustion of overcommitment, there's no peace. But when you honor your own needs and establish clear limits, you reduce that internal friction.
It's like the background noise of anxiety and obligation finally quiets down. You can actually hear your own thoughts and feel your own emotions without the constant interference of what you should be doing or how you should be acting.
Exactly. And this inner peace also leads to a greater sense of self-respect and confidence. Every time you successfully set and maintain a boundary, you reinforce the belief that you are worthy of respect and that your needs matter. This builds incredible self-esteem over time, creating a virtuous cycle where well-being supports stronger boundaries and stronger boundaries support well-being.
So, the initial discomfort or conflict we discussed in the last episode is really like a temporary storm before a period of lasting calm and clarity. The hard work pays off not just in the moment, but in a fundamental shift in how we experience our lives and ourselves.
It's a transformation, really. It's moving from a life of reacting to external demands to a life of proactively choosing what aligns with your deepest values and well-being. It's about sovereignty over your own life. We're not just talking about preventing burnout. We're talking about creating a life rich with genuine connection, personal freedom, and a deep, unshakable sense of peace and authenticity.
That's such an inspiring vision, Alex. It makes all the effort of learning and practicing boundaries feel incredibly worthwhile. It's not just a skill, it's a pathway to a more complete and joyful existence.
It truly is. The peace you feel when you know you've honored yourself, the clarity in your relationships, the freedom to spend your energy meaningfully. These are the enduring gifts of well-maintained boundaries. They're the foundations for a life where you don't just survive, but truly thrive.
And it's a continuous practice, a journey of deepening that connection with ourselves and with others in a healthy, respectful way. It's about building a life that feels truly like your life.
Precisely. It's the boundaries that heal, creating a more authentic and peaceful you. Thanks for listening. Welcome back. Last time, we explored the incredible rewards of setting healthy limits. Now, let's focus on reinforcing your boundaries and staying strong amidst challenges.
That's right, Alex. We've built some amazing foundations, learning to identify our needs, say no, and navigate difficult conversations. But the real work is making those boundaries stick, especially when external pressures try to push them down.
Exactly, Lisa. Think of your boundaries like a garden. You've planted the seeds and seen some beautiful growth. But weeds can still pop up, or a strong storm might come through. Reinforcing your boundaries is about tending to that garden consistently, reinforcing the fences, and knowing how to nurture it back to health after any disruption.
So, this episode is for anyone who's felt like they've made progress, only to find themselves backsliding when faced with a pushy family member, a demanding colleague, or even just their own lingering self-doubt. It's about sustained practice, isn't it?
Absolutely. Our first key to reinforcement is revisiting your why. Remember understanding the core reasons behind your boundaries? Regularly connecting with those core reasons, your self-respect, your emotional well-being, your need for mental clarity, is like adding potent fertilizer to your boundary garden. When you're tempted to bend, ask yourself, what am I protecting and why is it important to me?
That's a powerful reminder. It's easy to forget the initial motivation when you're in the thick of a boundary challenge. So, revisiting your personal why acts as an anchor, doesn't it? It grounds you back in your own value.
Precisely. And building on that, we need to talk about anticipating challenges. We discussed that it's not a matter of if, but when boundaries are tested. So, a vital reinforcement strategy is proactive preparation. Identify the people or situations most likely to test your boundaries. What are common tactics? What triggers your own old patterns of people-pleasing or conflict avoidance?
Forewarned is forearmed. So, if you know someone always tries to guilt trip you into taking on extra chores, you can mentally rehearse your calm, firm refusal before they call. It's like having a strategy session with yourself.
Exactly. And part of that rehearsal involves refining your communication. Reinforcement means continuing to practice skills like clear, respectful, and firm language. Instead of an apologetic, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I just don't think I can try. I appreciate the offer, but my current commitments mean I won't be able to take that on."
That's a great example. It acknowledges the other person without compromising your own space. And it's less likely to invite further negotiation than an overly soft no.
Right? Another crucial element of reinforcement is enforcing consequences. Boundaries without consequences are like a sign with no authority. When someone repeatedly crosses a boundary you've clearly communicated, consistently and calmly follow through with the consequence. This doesn't mean punishment. It means creating distance, ending a conversation, or declining an invitation for a period.
This can be really tough, especially if it involves people we care about. The guilt can creep back in.
It absolutely can. And that's precisely why we need emotional resilience. When guilt arises, externalize it. Remind yourself, this guilt is the old pattern speaking, not the truth of your needs. Picture it as a fleeting cloud passing across the sun of your self-worth.
That image of the cloud is helpful. It acknowledges the feeling without letting it overshadow everything. So, we've got revisiting your why, anticipating challenges, refining communication, enforcing consequences, and managing guilt. What else is key to staying strong?
Building your self-worth. Strong boundaries are a direct reflection of how much you value yourself. When you're feeling depleted or insecure, your boundaries are more likely to waver. This is where consistent self-care becomes a non-negotiable reinforcement tool. Are you getting enough rest? Are you nourishing your body? Are you engaging in activities that genuinely bring you joy and energy?
Self-care isn't selfish. It's boundary maintenance fuel. If you're running on empty, you have nothing left to defend. And that leads us nicely into the idea of building a supportive environment, which we'll be talking about in episode 26. Having allies, people who understand and respect your boundaries, makes a huge difference.
Indeed. And remember, reinforcement is also about learning from setbacks. Not every boundary attempt will go perfectly. If you slip up, don't see it as a failure. See it as data. What happened? What would you do differently next time? This is about progressive refinement, not perfection.
So, to recap for our listeners, reinforcing your boundaries is about consistent effort and smart strategies. It involves reconnecting with your why, preparing for challenges, practicing clear communication, consistently enforcing consequences, managing guilt through self-awareness, nurturing your self-worth through self-care, and learning from every experience.
And it's about remembering the incredible progress you've already made. You've come so far in understanding and implementing healthy boundaries. This is about building on that strength, staying resilient, and continuing to honor your needs. Your journey to a life of authenticity and peace is ongoing. And these reinforcement techniques are your tools for staying on the path, even when the path gets a little bumpy.
Well said, Alex. It's about making boundaries a natural, integrated part of your life.
Next episode, we'll explore building a boundary supportive environment. Welcome back to Boundaries That Heal. We reinforced your boundaries and stayed strong amidst challenges. Today, we're building a boundary supportive environment.
That's a crucial topic, Alex. It's one thing to set limits, but another to have others respect and encourage them. It feels like moving from defense to offense.
Exactly, Lisa. Think of it like growing a plant. It needs the best soil and water, but also the right sunlight and gentle breezes to thrive. A supportive environment is that perfect spot for your boundaries and well-being to flourish.
So, we're actively creating a circle of people who get it and respect our no.
Precisely. This involves nurturing existing supportive relationships, identifying and distancing yourself from draining ones, and proactively seeking new connections that align with your values and need for healthy limits.
Let's start with nurturing the good ones. Sometimes we take supportive people for granted.
We do. Nurturing these relationships means demonstrating appreciation, actively listening, offering support, and being vulnerable. When you show up authentically for others, they're more likely to reciprocate that respect for your boundaries. Think about a friend who respects your need for downtime. How can you acknowledge that? Maybe by planning activities that energize you both, or by saying, I really appreciate how you understand when I need to recharge.
That makes sense. It's a two-way street. And identifying and creating distance from less supportive influences? That can be the harder part.
It often is. This isn't always about dramatic confrontations. It's a gradual process of recognizing who consistently disrespects your stated limits. When someone repeatedly ignores your no, oversteps your space, or makes you feel guilty for setting a boundary, that's a red flag. A supportive environment means you don't have to absorb that negativity. You can choose to spend less time with them, or if the relationship is unavoidable, like with certain family members, you can practice firmer, more consistent boundary enforcement.
So, it's about making conscious choices about where you invest your energy. If a relationship feels like a constant battle respecting your boundaries, maybe it's time to reassess that closeness.
Exactly. And this applies to personal relationships, online interactions, and even the information we consume. We need to curate our environments to be uplifting and respectful. This might mean unfollowing social media accounts that promote negativity or comparison, or limiting exposure to news that causes undue stress. Creating a boundary-supportive environment extends to our digital lives.
That's a great point about the digital world. It's easy to get caught in a vortex of negativity online. So, if we're nurturing the good and creating distance from the draining, how do we proactively build new, boundary-supportive connections?
This is where you look for shared values and genuine connection. Join groups or activities that align with your interests, a book club, a hiking group, or a volunteer organization. You're more likely to find like-minded people who respect individuality and healthy boundaries. When you meet new people, pay attention to how they communicate, how they react to differing opinions, and if they seem to respect personal space and autonomy.
It's like looking for people who naturally practice what we've been preaching in this series. People who understand that boundaries aren't walls, but rather fences that protect and define a healthy space.
Precisely. And remember, building this environment is an ongoing process. It's not a one-time fix. People change, circumstances change, and your own needs may evolve. Regularly checking in with yourself about the health of your relationships and your overall environment is key. Ask yourself, does this person, this group, this situation uplift me and respect my limits? Or does it deplete me and challenge my sense of self?
So, it's about being an active architect of our social and personal world, rather than just a passive occupant. We're choosing the construction materials for our supportive environment.
Well said. We are actively choosing the people and influences that will help us not just survive, but thrive. This leads us to the people who might actively try to undermine our boundaries, sometimes subtly, sometimes not. We'll be tackling difficult personalities and manipulators in our next episode.
That sounds like essential learning for anyone practicing boundary setting. So, to recap what we've discussed today, building a boundary-supportive environment is about actively nurturing existing positive relationships, identifying and creating distance from draining influences, and proactively seeking out new connections that align with your values. It's about making conscious choices to surround yourself with people and influences that respect and reinforce your healthy limits. It's about building a personal ecosystem that helps your boundaries flourish.
And in our next episode, we'll equip you with strategies to deal with those individuals who may actively test or try to manipulate your boundaries. It's going to be a crucial step in solidifying your boundary setting journey. Thanks for listening. Welcome back. We're continuing our deep dive into setting healthy boundaries.
Last time, we explored the guilt that often arises when setting boundaries and introduced some initial ways to manage it. Today, we're stepping into advanced techniques for truly overcoming that persistent felt sense of guilt, even when logic tells us our boundaries are valid.
It's about moving beyond intellectual understanding to a deeper, embodied sense of self-permission. So, let's start with accepting the guilt without judgment.
Accepting it? That sounds counterintuitive when our goal is to release it.
Think of it this way. Resistance often amplifies feelings. When we fight guilt, we can end up feeling even more guilty about feeling guilty. Acceptance here means simply noticing, guilt is present right now. It's about observing the feeling without attaching judgment or criticism to yourself for having it.
So, rather than saying, I shouldn't feel this way, we acknowledge, I am feeling this way, like observing a passing cloud.
Precisely. And this act of non-resistance can surprisingly lessen the feeling's intensity. Once acknowledged, ask yourself, what story is this guilt attached to? Is it an old script from a time when your boundaries weren't honored, or perhaps when setting them had negative consequences?
That makes sense. Our past experiences can create automatic guilt responses, even in new, safer situations. How can we actively rewrite those old stories?
A powerful method is creating a boundary rights inventory. This involves consciously listing all the reasons why you are inherently entitled to set boundaries. It builds a strong, affirmative case for your own well-being.
So, we're creating an empowering counter-narrative to the guilt. What kinds of rights would we list?
You would list affirmations like, I have the right to protect my time and energy. I have the right to say no to requests that overwhelm me. My emotional health is a priority and boundaries are essential for it. I have the right to express my needs clearly and respectfully.
Actively writing these down would really solidify them, making them more accessible when guilt tries to creep in.
It provides concrete evidence to counter the guilt's whispers. Now let's explore somatic experiencing, connecting with the physical sensations of guilt.
This sounds like we're getting into deeper, embodied work. How does that connect with guilt?
Guilt often manifests physically, perhaps as a tightness in your chest, a knot in your stomach, or a heavy feeling in your shoulders. Instead of pushing these sensations away, we gently bring our awareness to them. Can you locate the tightness? What does it feel like precisely? Is it a dull ache, a sharp pang, a persistent pressure?
So, we're holding space for the physical manifestation of guilt, just as we do for the emotional feeling.
Yes. And then you can gently introduce a contrasting sensation. Imagine bringing a feeling of warmth, self-compassion, or grounding safety to that area. You're not trying to erase the guilt, but offering comfort and support within your own body. It's like a loving hand on your shoulder.
That's a wonderful way to put it. We're not fighting the discomfort, but offering solace alongside it.
Exactly. This practice helps to release pent-up emotional energy and teaches your nervous system that you can navigate difficult feelings without being overwhelmed. It builds resilience.
So, to recap, we're accepting guilt without judgment, identifying its underlying stories, building a boundary rights inventory, and using somatic experiencing to bring gentle awareness and comfort to physical sensations.
Precisely. And let's add one more powerful technique, proactive boundary reinforcement visualization. This is about mentally rehearsing success.
I've heard of visualization for achieving goals, but not necessarily for managing the emotional fallout of boundary setting.
It's incredibly effective. Imagine a scenario where you anticipate needing to set a boundary. Visualize yourself clearly and calmly stating your limit. See yourself noticing the other person's reaction, whatever it may be. Crucially, visualize yourself holding your boundary with a sense of inner peace and integrity, resisting the urge to fall back into guilt.
So, we're running a positive outcome scenario, focusing on our internal state of calm and resolve, even if there's external resistance.
Yes, You might even visualize reflecting on the situation afterward, perhaps with a trusted friend or in your own quiet contemplation, affirming your decision and feeling the relief and strength that comes from honoring your needs. This mental rehearsal primes you for real-world application.
This feels like building a strong internal foundation. It's not just about setting the boundary once, but about cultivating the capacity to maintain it and navigate the emotional aftermath with grace.
Absolutely. And remember, this is a process. There will be days when guilt feels more potent. The key is not to be discouraged, but to consistently return to these techniques. Each practice strengthens your ability to set and hold healthy boundaries.
We've moved from understanding the roots of guilt to actively releasing it through acceptance, reframing, somatic awareness, and mental rehearsal. It's a comprehensive approach to truly internalizing the health and necessity of our boundaries.
It is. And as we integrate these techniques, we move closer to living more authentically and peacefully, which is the true essence of boundaries that heal.
It's about shifting from a place of fear and obligation to one of confident self-care and self-respect.
Exactly. And with that, we'll wrap up today's episode. We've truly dug deep into overcoming that lingering guilt. Next episode, we'll explore how boundaries function across different cultures and in various challenging situations. Welcome back to Boundaries That Heal. Last time, we explored advanced techniques for overcoming guilt when setting stronger boundaries. Now, we tackle a crucial nuance: how boundaries differ across cultures and situations.
That's so true, Alex. What's polite in one place might be completely different elsewhere. It's like navigating conversations with different dialects.
Exactly. Cultural norms around personal space, directness, and obligation vary dramatically. Some cultures prioritize the group over the individual, meaning less emphasis on saying no directly or maintaining very strict personal time.
For someone from an individualistic culture where personal autonomy is valued, this can be confusing. They might feel pressured to agree or feel their space is invaded unintentionally.
Precisely. A direct no is clear in many Western cultures. However, elsewhere it can be seen as rude. So, people might use indirect language, offer conditional acceptance, or agree without intending to follow through, all to preserve harmony.
It's about communicating respect within the local framework. How do you balance that with your own need for boundaries? It sounds like a tightrope walk.
It absolutely can be. The key is awareness and adaptability without sacrificing your core needs. First, be observant. Pay attention to how people interact in a new cultural context. How do they express disagreement? How do they handle requests? This observation is like learning the local language of boundaries.
So it's about cultural intelligence, understanding the unspoken rules of engagement for that group.
That's a perfect way to put it, Lisa. Once you have awareness, you can adapt. This doesn't mean abandoning your boundaries, but perhaps softening your delivery. Instead of "I can't do that," try "let me see what's possible with my current commitments," or "that sounds interesting, but my schedule is quite full." You're communicating a limitation politely.
That makes sense. It's about finding a bridge between your needs and their communication style. What about non-cultural situations, like workplace versus family?
Oh, absolutely. Boundaries for your boss differ from those for your best friend or parents. In the workplace, boundaries are about professionalism, efficiency, and work-life balance. You might have strict hours or say no to unreasonable deadlines.
This is generally accepted because it's part of the professional environment with clear expectations.
Exactly. But at home, expectations can shift. Family dynamics, built on shared history, can make boundaries harder. A parent might feel entitled to your time, or a sibling might expect constant availability. Here, Boundaries might involve limiting visits, how much you share, or how you're spoken to.
It can be harder because of emotional history. Saying no to your mom can feel heavier than to a colleague.
It certainly can. In family situations, like with cultural differences, initial communication might need to be gentler. Focus on your needs and feelings rather than accusations. Mom, I love spending time with you, but I need quiet time to recharge is often better received than you always call me at the worst possible time.
So we have a toolbox of boundary setting approaches. Some direct, like a hammer, for clarity, others gentler, like a fine-tipped brush for delicate situations.
That's a wonderful analogy, Lisa. The skill is knowing which tool to pick. It also means adjusting your tools for different environments. Within friendships, boundaries might be about mutual respect for each other's time and energy.
And then there are unexpected situations, like an overly inquisitive stranger or an aggressive salesperson. Those require quick, concise, firm boundaries.
Absolutely. Here, use a simple, polite, but firm refusal. Avoid lengthy explanations and create physical distance if needed. You don't owe a stranger a detailed explanation. A brief, no, thank you, and moving on is perfectly acceptable.
The common thread across all these different cultures and situations seems to be self-awareness, respect, and clear, though not always direct, communication.
Precisely. Your needs are valid, regardless of context, but how you communicate them might need to adapt to foster understanding. It's about finding balance between honoring yourself and respecting the world around you. This develops the wisdom to navigate social interactions with greater ease and authenticity, no matter where you are or who you're with. It's about knowing yourself and choosing the most effective way to communicate that in their specific context.
So, to recap, cultural norms influence boundary expectations, requiring observation and adaptability in communication. Workplace boundaries focus on professionalism and balance, while family boundaries need more emotional navigation and gentler approaches. For acquaintances or strangers, direct, concise boundaries are appropriate. The overarching theme is cultivating cultural intelligence and employing a flexible approach to boundary setting, grounded in self-awareness and respect.
That sums it up beautifully, Lisa. Being mindful of these variations allows us to set boundaries that are not only effective for helping yourself, but also for fostering understanding and connection with others, no matter the circumstances. This awareness is a vital step in making your boundaries truly heal and strengthen your relationships. Thanks for listening. Welcome back. Last time, we explored how different cultures and various personal situations shape our approach to setting limits. Now we're diving into how to truly make boundary setting a natural, integrated part of your everyday life.
Exactly, Alex. It's so easy to get caught up in thinking of boundaries as these big, dramatic pronouncements or difficult confrontations. But the real power, the truly healing aspect, comes when setting healthy limits becomes as natural as breathing. It's about weaving it into the fabric of our daily interactions.
That's right, Lisa. And to do that, we need to approach it as an ongoing practice. Remember how we've talked about building self-worth and the importance of self-care? Integrating boundaries into daily life is the active application of those foundational principles. It's about consistency, not perfection. You won't always get it right, and that's perfectly okay. The goal is progress, not flawless execution every single time.
So, how do we move from a place of sometimes remembering to set a boundary to a place where it's almost automatic or at least readily accessible? I think a big part of it is about internal awareness. We've discussed identifying your boundary gaps and listening to your inner voice. It's about tuning into those subtle signals that tell you when something feels off.
Precisely. That internal awareness is crucial. Imagine your body and mind as having sensors. When you feel that slight tension, that flicker of resentment, or that feeling of being drained after an interaction, those are your internal signals saying, hey, something needs adjustment here. Integrating boundaries means learning to honor those signals promptly rather than pushing them aside.
That makes so much sense. It's like we've spent episodes learning to read a map, and now we're putting that map into practice while navigating our daily commute. We're not stopping to reread every street name. We're using our knowledge to move forward confidently. So, what are some practical ways to cultivate this daily practice?
One of the most effective ways is through small, consistent actions. Instead of waiting for a major boundary violation, start with smaller, everyday instances. For example, if you tend to overcommit, consciously turn down one small, non-essential request this week. It might be agreeing to a coffee catch-up when you're already feeling stretched thin, or taking on an extra small task at home when you've already done your share. Each time you practice saying no or setting a reasonable limit in these smaller scenarios, you're strengthening that boundary setting muscle.
I love that. It's like doing small exercises at the gym to build up endurance for a marathon. And I think it also involves being mindful of our energy levels. We've touched on self-care, but integrating boundaries means proactively managing your energy. If you know a certain social gathering tends to drain you, you might decide to attend for shorter duration or make sure you have quiet time afterward to recharge. It's not about avoiding things, but about engaging in a way that respects your own capacity.
Absolutely. It's about conscious energy management. Another key element is reflection. Dedicate just a few minutes each day, perhaps at the end of the day, to reflect on your interactions. Ask yourself, were there any moments where I compromised my well-being? How did I feel about those moments? What could I have done differently, even in a small way? This reflective practice helps you identify patterns and opportunities to reinforce your boundaries moving forward. It's not about self-criticism, but self-awareness and learning.
That's a powerful practice. So, it's about honoring those internal signals, starting with small, consistent actions, managing our energy proactively, and then reflecting on our experiences. It sounds like it's about making conscious choices, moment by moment, to align our actions with our needs and values.
Exactly. And when we start making these choices consistently, we begin to shift our internal landscape. We build more confidence in our ability to set limits. This, in turn, can influence the way others perceive and interact with us. People start to understand your limits, not because you've shouted them from the rooftops, but because you've demonstrated them through consistent action. It's a gentle but firm reprogramming of expectations, both for yourself and for others.
It's like building a reputation for respecting yourself, which then encourages others to respect you too. And that leads to more authentic relationships, doesn't it? When you're not constantly contorting yourself to please others or avoid conflict, you're free to be your true self.
Precisely. And this is where the practice, not a prescription, idea really shines. A prescription is rigid. A practice is flexible and adaptable. Your needs will change, circumstances will change, and your boundaries will need to adapt along with them. Instead of having a fixed set of rules, you develop a skillful responsiveness. You learn to assess situations and choose the boundary that best serves your well-being in that moment.
So, it's about staying present and attuned to what's needed, rather than rigidly adhering to a past decision. This sounds like it requires a level of self-compassion too, because there will be times we falter, times we react out of old habits.
Oh, absolutely. Self-compassion is fundamental. When you notice you've overstepped your own boundary or allowed someone else to, offer yourself kindness. Acknowledge it, learn from it, and recommit to your practice. Don't let a slip-up derail your entire journey. Every day, every interaction is an opportunity to begin again, to choose what feels right for you. It truly is a journey of continuous learning and evolution.
This idea of integrating boundaries into daily life really empowers us. It's not about building walls, but about creating a clear, healthy space around ourselves that allows for authentic connection. It's about living more mindfully and intentionally.
Well said, Lisa. We spent this series learning the why, the what, and the how of boundaries. We've explored how to set them, enforce them, and navigate them in various relationships and situations. Now, as we bring this episode to a close and look towards our final discussion next time, remember that the most profound healing comes from making these practices a lived reality. It's about showing up for yourself consistently with awareness and compassion.
And that's the essence of it, isn't it? Making healthy boundaries a natural part of who we are and how we move through the world. It's not a destination, it's a way of traveling.
Indeed. Next time, we'll wrap up our series with a look at how this journey of boundaries continues and how to keep growing and evolving. Don't miss it. Welcome to the final episode of Boundaries That Heal.
We've reached the end of our 30-episode journey, Alex, exploring how to set healthy limits and live more authentically.
Indeed, we began by understanding the fundamental importance of boundaries. They aren't about pushing people away, but about creating space for healthier connections. Remember how we discussed how boundaries protect our energy and mental well-being?
Yes, and that boundaries come in many forms. We talked about physical, emotional, mental, and time boundaries. It was so helpful to see that it's not just one thing, but a spectrum of ways we can protect ourselves. That really clarified for me that boundaries aren't solely about saying no.
Exactly. And saying no was a significant theme. We explored the art of saying no, not as a blunt refusal, but as a polite and strategic skill. We learned to differentiate between assertiveness, aggression, and passivity, realizing that true assertiveness respects both our needs and the needs of others. Lisa, how did you find the lessons on deciphering guilt and the people-pleasing paradox?
That was a tough part for me, Alex. Understanding that guilt often stems from unmet needs or ingrained beliefs about what we should be doing was a revelation. It helped me see that prioritizing my needs isn't selfish. It's essential for me to show up fully for others. And the paradox of people-pleasing, where trying too hard to please everyone ultimately leaves us depleted and resentful, that really resonated.
It's a common trap. We found that identifying our boundary gaps, those areas where we tend to let others in too much, is the first step to addressing them. This naturally led us into the complex territory of family dynamics. We looked at how our upbringing shapes our understanding and practice of boundaries, and how to navigate deeply rooted patterns.
And then we broadened our scope to other relationships, romantic partners, where balancing connection with personal space is key. Workplace boundaries, which are vital for professional well-being and preventing burnout. And even our digital lives, setting limits on screen time and online interactions, a surprisingly challenging area today.
The digital realm is a whole new frontier for boundaries, for sure. We also discussed what happens when boundaries are tested. This is where the concept of enforcing consequences comes in. It's not about punishment, but about calmly and consistently demonstrating what is acceptable and what is not.
That's a crucial distinction, calm and consistent. It's not about an emotional outburst, but about having a clear plan for what you'll do if a boundary is crossed. And throughout all of this, we kept coming back to self-worth. Alex, you consistently reminded us that strong boundaries are built on a foundation of believing we are worthy of respect and care.
Indeed, because when we truly value ourselves, setting limits becomes a natural extension of that self-respect. We addressed navigating difficult personalities and manipulators, recognizing their tactics, and developing strategies to protect ourselves without compromising our integrity. And of course, self-care emerged as the essential fuel for boundary maintenance. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Which led us to a holistic approach to well-being, integrating boundaries into every aspect of our lives. We even acknowledged that setting boundaries can, and often does, bring initial conflict. It's important to be prepared for that, knowing that it often clears the way for deeper, more authentic relationships.
And the long-term rewards, Lisa? That's where the true benefit lies. A life of authenticity, peace, and genuine connection. We talked about reinforcing those boundaries, recognizing that it's an ongoing practice, not a one-time fix. Building a supportive environment, whether with friends, family, or even creating your own personal sanctuary, makes all the difference.
We even delved into techniques for overcoming that persistent felt sense of guilt. We also explored how boundaries can look different in various cultures and situations. It's about adapting and understanding the nuances, not rigid rules.
Ultimately, the message through all 30 episodes has been this. Boundaries that heal are not a destination, but a continuous, evolving practice. It's about integrating these principles into your daily life, making conscious choices that honor your needs and your values. It's about living a life where you feel respected, understood, and authentically you.
Watching listeners embrace this journey, share their struggles, and celebrate their wins has been incredibly rewarding. You've all shown such commitment to creating lives filled with more peace and less resentment. Remember, every no you say to something that drains you is a yes to something that nourishes you. Every time you hold firm to a boundary, you're building a stronger, more resilient you.
This series has been a roadmap, a toolkit, and a constant reminder of your inherent right to protect your well-being. We've armed you with knowledge and strategies, and now it's your time to continue practicing, refining, and truly living your boundary-rich life. Thank you for letting us be a part of your journey.
Thank you to everyone who tuned in, who sent in questions, and who's embracing this powerful work. Your commitment to growth is inspiring. It's been an absolute honor producing this series with you, Alex.
The honor is all mine, Lisa, and to our listeners, remember, your journey with boundaries continues. Embrace it with courage, kindness, and unwavering self-respect. Thanks for listening to the series.